the committee will come to order. I think we have a quorum. If you would record your attendance, please. All right, we do have a quorum. Senator Locke, are you prepared with the subcommittee report?
Yes, sir.
Okay. That would be nice.
The subcommittee met on January 24th and took up 7 bills. The report is being distributed. First bill was Senate Bill 336, Senator Peake's bill, which dealt with the right to speak at open meetings. There was one line amendment on page 5.
Properly moved and seconded that we amend the bill as recommended. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Okay.
The amendment prohibits a public body from making rules that limit public comment to written comments. And Senate Bill 336 requires that every public body afford an opportunity for public comment during any open meeting. And the committee recommended that the bill be reported as amended, 7-0.
Okay. You've heard the subcommittee report. Is there any discussion? Anyone in the audience in opposition? The vote open. I'm sorry, excuse me, I apologize. Welcome.
Members of the committee, Phyllis Arrico with the Virginia Association of Counties, also speaking for the Virginia Municipal League today. We oppose this bill. We think it goes further than a FOIA action. FOIA requires open meetings, and the meetings are open. It gets into the administration of a meeting. And in addition, the definition of public body is so broad, you're going to encompass really hundreds or thousands of citizen advisory committee meetings that don't have any legislative authority. So it's a very broad, and we oppose for those reasons.
Okay.
Thank you.
Were you at the subcommittee report?
I was,
okay.
Sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jeremy Bennett with the Virginia School Boards Association. Just like to echo some of the comments made. We have concerns regarding the breadth of the bill and the impact it would have on our membership meetings. Often our membership meets twice a month. Once is a public meeting. There's an opportunity for public comment. The other is often a business meeting. And we feel that passing this bill would impede their efficiency and ability to get business done. Sometimes for disciplinary actions, our membership will have an open meeting only to move into a closed proceeding so that they can deal with those confidential matters. So again, having a public comment on a meeting that no one else is privy to, we don't see what the point would be. Recognize the intent of the bill, but just feel that it is very broad in scope.
You were at the subcommittee meeting?
I was not, sir. Sorry. I did have a conflicting education appointment to make.
Was there anyone from your organization there?
Not to my knowledge, sir.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else wish to speak in opposition? If not, any further discussion? Hearing none, record your votes. That bill is reported. 9-0. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senate Bill 512, Senator Suderline's bill, dealt with student telephone numbers and student personnel email addresses. It excludes student telephone numbers and student personnel email addresses that would be contained in scholastic records from mandatory disclosure. And there were no amendments. And this, the subcommittee recommended that this bill be reported 6-1.
And you so move?
I so move.
Okay. Is there a second? Yes. All right. Properly moved and seconded. Any further, any discussion from any opposition in the audience? Hearing none, record your votes. That one reports 9-1. Okay, continue.
Senate Bill 630 was Senator Servel's bill. There was one line amendment.
You want to report that amendment? Amiga?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The amendment is on line 32. After court, strike shall and insert may.
Is there a motion on that amendment?
Move.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded that amendment be adopted. All in favor say aye. All opposed? Okay, that one is adopted.
Senator Serville's bill provides that, and in addition to any penalties imposed under FOIA, if a court finds that any officer, employee, or member of a public body failed to provide public records to a requester in accordance with the provisions of FOIA, or altered, destroyed the requested public records prior to the expiration of those records, that there would be a fine of up to $100 per record. And what the amendment does is to remove the requirement that a judge impose a civil fine on a board member who improperly votes to certify a closed meeting and makes the fine discretionary, which is the change in the shall to may. And the committee recommended reporting on 7-0.
Is anyone here in opposition to that bill motion? Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Phyllis Arico, speaking for the Virginia Association of Counties, Virginia Municipal League. We oppose this. We feel that there are adequate remedies in the Freedom of Information Act to address this, and it may catch inadvertent issues. So we oppose for those reasons. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak in opposition? Is there any further discussion on the bill? You've heard the motion. All in favor? Record your votes. Bill passes 10-1. All right, continue.
Next bill is Senate Bill 657, Senator Lewis's bill. There were no amendments. It excludes from mandatory disclosure under FOIA information held by the Virginia Commercial Space Flight Authority that is characterized as classified or sensitive but unclassified, including any national security, defense, and foreign policy information, provided that that information is exempt under FOIA. It was recommended for reporting 6-0, and I move that it be reported.
Okay. Probably moved and seconded that Senate Bill 657 be reported. Is anyone in opposition to that bill? Any further discussion? Record your votes. That bill was reported 10-0. Okay, continue.
Senate Bill 730, Senator DeSteff's bill. The bill raised several issues related to the use of social media by public officials and how the state's Freedom of Information Act comes into play with such use. In addition, there were issues raised relating to the First Amendment. It was the will of the subcommittee that the subject needed more in-depth study in order to develop the best policy. So the recommendation on a 5-0 vote with one abstention to pass by indefinitely with a letter to the Freedom of Information Advisory Council to study the issues raised by the bill. And I so move.
Is there a second? Probably moved and seconded that this bill be passed by indefinitely and send a letter to the Freedom of Information Advisory Council. Is anyone speaking opposition to that motion? Hearing none. With that, if no further discussion, record your votes. Bill. That motion is 10-0 to go to the Freedom of Information Council. All right, continue.
Senate Bill 858, Senator Mason's bill. The bill will provide the College of William and Mary with the same exemption related to investment activities that is provided for the University of Virginia. There was not opposition expressed from those in attendance at the subcommittee meeting, and it was recommended 5-0 to report, and I so move.
Properly moved and seconded, that bill be reported. Is anyone wish to speak in opposition to that motion? Any further discussion? If not, record your votes. That bill is reported 12-0. Continue.
The last bill was Senate Bill 876, also Senator Mason. At the crux of this legislation is the determination of who may be a custodian of a record and what happens when when public records or portions of the record are transferred from one public body to another. Representatives from the Virginia Association of Counties, the Virginia Municipal League, and the Virginia Press Association spoke to the bill, and the recommendation coming from the subcommittee was 7-0 to pass by indefinitely with a letter to the Freedom of Information Advisory Council to study the issues raised by the bill, and those who spoke also recommended unanimously in doing so. So I move that we take the recommendation of the subcommittee.
Okay. Second. Properly moved and seconded that this bill be passed by indefinitely, and the council look at it over the course of the year. Anyone in opposition to that motion? Hearing none, record your votes. That action passes 11-0.
Mr. Chairman, that concludes the report of the committee.
Senator Locke, I appreciate your work on that. The following bills will not be heard today: 652, 799, 424. There's efforts to work out some deals on those bills. Amigo, did I miss any?
652.
424. 799. Thanks for this.
Okay. 799. Senator Hanger, you ready? You're up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, I have Senate Bill 946 in front of the committee today. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, this is, I think, probably one of the more simple bills that I have, not to suggest you vote for it, but it's easy for me to explain. After conversations with the Auditor of Public Accounts, there is a requirement that the Auditor of Public Accounts do certain audits annually, and it was determined that she, in this instance, can save money, resources, and apply some of those resources to more critical areas if she can make a judgment call. Some of these annual audits that she's required to do are very simple. There's no problem, and it's just repetitive. And she would, we could give her, with this provision of this bill, the discretion to decide whether it would require an annual audit or something other than an annual audit. And that's what the bill does, Mr. Chairman.
Any questions of the patron? Is there anyone here in opposition to Senate Bill 946? Hearing none, is there a motion? Properly moved and seconded, Senate Bill 946 be reported. All in favor, record your votes. That bill is reported 12-0.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Cosgrove. Where? Well, there he is, Senator Cosgrove, just in time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sorry to keep you waiting, sir. Mr. Chairman, before your committee today, I have Senate Bill 216.
All right. Bring attention to Senate Bill 216.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Senate Bill 216 is brought because of a 2-year study conducted by the Virginia Academy of Science, Engineering, and Medicine, studying aerospace and aviation in the Commonwealth of Virginia. I was privileged to be a member of that board. It has some of the finest minds in the Commonwealth of Virginia and in the United States serving on that board.
Does that include you?
No, sir, I was going to tell you that as soon as I walked in the room, the IQ fell substantially. But I was very privileged to serve on that board. Mr. Chairman, the bill would basically require VDEP to have a full-time singular contact for aerospace and aviation in the Commonwealth. In speaking with them, Mr. Chairman, they've gone through a reorganization. They have a certain number of people, and in speaking with them and having their assurance that aerospace and aviation would be well cared for by a single person who just may have other things to do as well. I'm comfortable with it, Mr. Chairman, so I would ask that this bill be stricken.
Okay. If there's no opposition, Senate Bill 216 will be stricken. Do we need a recorded vote on that? Okay. Record your votes. That bill is stricken 12-0.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do want to again thank the administration and the folks at VEDP for working with me on that.
Okay. Thank you. Senator McClellan, is she in the room?
She's in Commerce, sir.
All right. Senator Openchain is also in there. Senator Reeves, are you ready to present your bills?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have for the committee Senate Bill 861.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, this bill is stemming from an issue in my district that's been going on in a community called Lake of the Woods. And I've tried to stay out of this situation as much as possible and try to let the homeowners association and the residents work it out themselves. But I've received hundreds of calls, letters, emails. So this bill is an attempt to try to figure out a resolution to that. I do have a number of folks from Lake of the Woods that can probably articulate a little more about what it is that's got them fired up into a fever and where they are with relation to the homeowners association. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I would ask if you could set a time limit on this because I know there are a lot of folks, but I'll just let Mr. Bruce Kay come up, I think, first and articulate what's happened, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Yeah, let's give each side 5 minutes. So. Welcome.
It's not this. I've got some handouts they can give. Chairman, committee, thank you for your time. Addressing Senate Bill 861 today. My name is Bruce Kay. I retired from Hughes Aircraft Company as an operations manager for major programs. Carolyn and I moved to the lake in 2004 and became active in the community. I was elected to the board of directors in 2007 and elected president of the association in 2009 and 10. In 2009, hopefully some of you will remember this, the association was under state mandate to replace our dam spillway at a cost of $6 million. The board had to do the assessment for the board had to do an assessment for the funds. At that time, the board decided to do a special assessment. And why did we do this? It was to preserve the members' rights under the Property Owners Act of Virginia, that even though if the assessment was rescinded, the lake would have to be lowered and damage our property values. I worked with DCR and Soil and Water Board in 2009 to try to change requirements to no avail. In December 2009, I contacted Senator Hawk and had a placeholder made so that we could do something in 2010. We were able to produce Senate Bill 276, 2010 Dam Safety Bill and successfully received Senate and delegate total approval. Thank you very much again. Saving the Commonwealth over $250 million in repairs that would have to be made, and the association in $6 million, and ensuring that we would have safe dams. The Lake of the Woods is a community in Orange County, gated community of about 2,600 acres. consisting of 4,256 lots containing approximately 3,800 homes, about 9,000 full-time residents with over 800 students attending Orange County School. There's a wide variety of members in the association, including young families, retirees, veterans, widows, widowers on fixed incomes, as well as affluent individuals. At the end of 2007, Delegate Nick Freitas requested a meeting with the board president of Lake of the Woods, the general manager, 2 association lawyers, another member, and myself to try and convince the association to do a referendum on this project. This was because so many members had contacted Delegate Freitas and basically said they needed some relief in this. Nick related these concerns to the board and to the attorneys at the meeting. And basically what it came down to is the attorney said, you can't do legislation to stop this at any cost. The members pay the attorney but cannot speak or get advice from them because they work for the board, not for the members. And this means the members would have to foot an additional attorney's bill to defend themselves against attorneys that they're already paying for to help the association. I've come here to support SB 861, which would limit the ability of the board of directors to approve capital projects over $1 million without getting approval of the members. Why do this bill? Why not do this bill? It will not stop any operational requirements such as road maintenance, infrastructure, and other maintenance required. Example, Lake of the Woods spends almost $1 million annually just to maintain their golf course. How could this happen that we don't have any more property rights? You say, aren't there rules to protect the members? We could do a petition, which we did, and we turned this in on January 16th. There's almost 1,000 signatures there, and we're waiting for results from the committee. The other thing is special assessments. If the board had called for a special assessment, the committee would have 60 days under the Homeowners Protection Act to rescind that. The other thing is to elect different board members. In the last few years, 2 board presidents and several directors have resigned for various reasons, and they were replaced by the sitting board's choices. Senate Bill 861 is our only hope for the members in the association and in Virginia to protect their property rights.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask one question? Thank you. Mr. Chair, I'd like to know how many residents are there in Lake of the Woods, just so I have a reference point. I get a lot of emails from your development, even though I live hundreds of miles away. So I have no idea how many people live there,
There's
though.
4,256 lots, so there's that many owners. We have approximately 9,000 full-time residents and probably the equivalent in part-time residents that commute.
And one more question, Mr. Chair.
Sure.
So the petition has about a little over 1,000 signatures. Is that right?
That relates to the 4,256. Only 4,256 lots are allowed to vote. There's 1 vote per lot.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that.
Just one real quick thing. I gave Bryce a handout. It shows at our last meeting on the 16th when we presented it, general board meetings, if you get 20, 25 people, you're lucky. We quit counting at 350 at this meeting. I'm sure it was over 400.
Any other questions, committee? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Did you wish to speak on the issue? Okay. In support or in opposition?
Well, I am a member of the Lake of the Woods Association. I'm Dr. Balzano. I would like to submit a written 3-page testimony for you, but I'd like to make one comment, if I may.
Sure.
We're here today to talk.
Did you identify yourself as?
Oh, I'm Dr. Michael Balzano.
Okay.
I live at Lake of the Woods.
Okay.
I have 3 properties there. We are here today to support your bill because we seek to have someone look at what's happening at this lake. We have a board that is preparing to borrow $5+ million without any approval. They will not seek a referendum because overwhelmingly it would be rejected, and they know it. We are here today for a small association, but our issue is much larger. I have been on the phone with your Commonwealth attorney and the ombudsman, and all of them have said, well, they've basically become grief counselors because there's nothing they can do. The law will not help them. One prominent member of the community just wrote an email to everyone saying, we need to keep government out of our private business. Now, I would submit to you, sir, that is the absence of government oversight has created the vacuum that has created the situation we have today. HOA boards are now sovereign. They are the state, not you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone here in opposition to Senate Bill, whatever, 861? All right.
A little tight. That's all right.
Welcome.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. I'm Pia Triggiani. I'm here on behalf of Community Associations Institute. I'm a practicing lawyer in Northern Virginia. We routinely represent common interest community associations, developers, and homeowners in community associations. We are indeed opposed to the legislation. I know that there are several members of the Lake of the Woods Board who are here today, and their manager who can speak to the specifics of the issue which gives rise to the legislation. But a couple of things, points that we would like to make. These common interest communities are private entities. They are not public entities. They are driven and limited by their documents, and the documents establish the parameters of the authority, not only of the association, but of the board of directors. The board of directors is elected. It's a corporate board of directors. They're a non-stock the association is a non-stock corporation. We attorneys who represent these associations do not represent the board. We do not represent the manager. We represent the entity, the non-stock corporation. So in making these decisions and in providing advice to common interest communities, we look at it from the perspective of the corporation. Associations and boards of directors, again, are limited in their authority, and it's driven by what's in the documents and the scope of their authority. That includes expenditures. Traditionally, the legislature has not gotten into the detail of limiting expenditures and addressing for associations the scope of their expenditures, because these communities vary in size very substantially. The largest, of course, is Reston Association with over 20,000 homes. It's the second largest in the country, and it ranges down to 2-unit condominium unit owners associations at the beach, in Virginia Beach, which is a pretty typical size. So the legislature has traditionally said the documents are in control. We can't, by the Constitution of Virginia, modify that existing contract, so we will not legislate in that arena. So that is one of the reasons, and certainly the primary reasons, why we rise in opposition to the board. I know that, to this bill, I'm sorry, and all due respect to you, Senator. There are several members of the board of directors, and I think Leighton Cummings, who's the president of Lake of the Woods, is here and will speak to the bill, as well as Phil Rodenheiser. We also have the presidents of several homeowners associations in Northern Virginia, Cascades, which is 6,600 homes, Stone Ridge, which I believe is 2,600 homes, and one other who may also want to speak in opposition to the bill. So I'd like to turn it over to Leighton Cummings.
Any questions of the
Yeah,
witness?
I'm glad to answer any questions.
All right, come on up. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Senators. My name is Leighton Cumming. I'm president of the Lake of the Woods Board of Directors. And we appreciate Senator Reeves giving us this opportunity to discuss this bill. I am in opposition to the bill, and a good part of our board is also, we are in opposition because it makes it that much more difficult for us to maintain our community. Our documents mandate that the Board of Directors maintain the community. And you can argue about what that means, but in this case that was discussed earlier, we have a 50-year-old pool that we have been putting money into over the years. We have other facilities that are under discussion here that are part of that money that the gentleman earlier was talking about. And part of our obligation is to maintain that. So that is our reason for opposing this bill. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I'm Phil Rodenberg. I'm the General Manager of Lake of the Woods Association. And with all due respect to our senator, who we appreciate serving our community, we oppose the bill because we see it as hurting not only our association, but other large-scale associations across the state, hampering them from taking care of their normal responsibilities to take care of the maintenance and replacement of items. We're mandated by the state to do a reserve study every 5 years. That reserve study lays out the work that has to be done to replace items such as our golf course, our roads, et cetera. And if there was a project that was over $1 million, there would be some question whether we could do that project. If there was an emergency of some kind, there would be a concern that we would have to seek a member vote before we could repair something that we have insurance for. We're a very responsible association. Our bylaws allow for members to petition and bring matters to the membership for a change, and we believe that within our association we can handle these matters, and we ask that you would vote against this bill today. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, my name is Greg Pearson. I serve on the Branimal Board of Directors. Branimal is a very large planned community with 3,800 homes. I'm opposed to this amendment of the code, feeling that it is an unnecessary restriction on orderly business of community associations statewide for the following reasons. The official documents of HOAs determine the process by which boards operate. The state should not overrule these provisions agreed to by the property owners. Those HOA documents undoubtedly outline steps to modify the board's authority over expenditures. If there is support within the community, it should be used to change the covenants without burdening all other HOAs in Virginia. Number three, like local, state, and federal governments, HOAs operate as a representative democracy. So the members of an HOA already have the means to effect change at the ballot box. Our attorney has advised us that the Branimal Board has the obligation to maintain our amenities or risk a lawsuit. Number five, as proposed, if the community suffered a hurricane or flood, repairs would have to be delayed until permission was gathered from the membership. And finally, number six, the Branimal covenants set a quorum of 20%. In the past 25 years, there has never been a vote that even reached 35%. Setting a minimum vote level of 50% as proposed is exceedingly high, so high as to prevent a board from meeting its fiduciary responsibilities. Common sense tells us there are far-reaching adverse effects on all HOAs because of this proposal, and I ask you to reject it.
All right, thank you. I see folks lining up. We have reached the time limit. Are there any facts that have not already been put out? So the issues, Migo, give us the reasoning why no action has been taken by the General Assembly and passed legislation on HOAs.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess the main issue has been that because it's considered to be a contract, a private contract, the legislature trying to change the terms of that contract would be considered a violation of the impairment of contracts clause of the Virginia Constitution. And that's the main reason that has been set forward.
And I would assume that that would mean we would be in court for the next half dozen years.
Well, I mean, just to be fair and
You can
balanced.
you can answer, say yes, amigo, it's all right.
There are provisions in the bill that do defer to the declaration. I think and on line 12, where it says except to the extent that the declaration specifically states, and then there's a prospective aspect to it. So there are some attempts to prevent the impairment of contracts issue, but
Senator Reeves, with your experience in the military, can't you order these two sides to get together and
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to be anywhere else but at this dais right now. But I will tell you what I did find out. The 1,000 signatures are there. Phil just told me that they're going through those signatures now and that there'll be some resolution to the signatures on February 3rd. And I certainly don't want to violate the Constitution, and Amigo's a pretty good attorney, which I'm only a practicing attorney in courts of justice. So I don't know if there's a compromise we can find here, maybe through the Housing Commission or something as this process continues. I think with the parties that are here today, I think there might be a willingness to get back to the table and try to figure this out. But you know, Mr. Chairman, as we all do, as we represent the various constituencies in our districts, it's those who yell the loudest sometimes that we have to listen to, and that's why I'm here, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you looking out for your constituents. Any questions from any member of the committee? Is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion, if you don't mind penning a letter to send this to the Housing Commission. I'd like somebody to look at it. So in those situations where we do have cases where HOAs maybe could be a little heavy-handed, I'm not saying that in this case, and we have a constituency that's fighting against that, there might be some grounds that we could look at.
Mr. Chairman, I'll move that we pass this bill by indefinitely with a letter to the Housing Commission asking them to take a look at the impact that this would have on HOAs across the state.
Okay. Properly moved and seconded. Senator Eppen, did you have?
Just briefly, Senator Barker and I represent parts of a very large association called Kingstown, and I represent a building on the Potomac, which is a smaller building, but has condos that they're $3-4 million, and I imagine it costs a lot to replace things there or to repair them to the style that that they're built in after they age for a while. And I just can't imagine how you could possibly get half the lot owners to do that in any condo. So I'm kind of, you know, let the Housing Commission have fun with it, but it seems like quite a puzzle.
All right. All right. You've heard the motion to refer it to the Housing Commission. No further discussion. Record your votes. All right. That action is agreed to at 14-0.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Sarver, were you? All right. Scott. Senator McClellan showed up. Welcome.
I snuck in on you. Mr. Chairman, I have Senate Bill 906, and I have a substitute.
Is it a motion to adopt the substitute? All in favor say aye. All right. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. First of all, let me say this bill has nothing to do with anestheticians, has nothing to do with cosmetologists. It was never intended to, but I think some of the language in the original bill that was intended merely to clarify some definitions without changing them got anestheticians and cosmetologists concerned, and so this substitute limits this bill solely to its original purpose, which was to create an occupational title of master barber as a grandfathering mechanism to handle some changes that have been made in the licensing for barbers to bring the barbering profession up to date with the current training and education process and scope of practice for barbers without putting older barbers out of business. The problem is that last fall, the Board of Barbers and Cosmetology realized that there were some barbers who were performing services that were outside of the scope of the barbering license, and based on changes that were made to that license, took specifically chemical texture services, thermal waving, styling, wig care, waxing, and hair lightening out of the scope of the barber license going forward. The problem is you have some barbers who were trained in these services many years ago, who were licensed in these services many years ago. And in this case, I have a constituent who is 74 years old. He has been a barber for 52 years, providing these services with no issues. And if this bill is not passed to create a very limited master barber license to grandfather those barbers who were trained under those old services and let them continue to do them going forward, it's going to put my constituent out of business. So I worked with the board of, with DPOR to create this very narrow master barber license, and that's the bill.
Okay, thank you. Is there any opposition to Senate Bill 906? Welcome.
Good afternoon. My name is Jessica Olson, and I'm a licensed esthetician, licensed master esthetician, and an instructor here in the state of Virginia. I'd like to clarify I'm not against all of this. I'm completely in favor of the portion of, or the original objective to create a master barber license for a grandfather. I agree with that. But the secondary portion of this bill was to consolidate and clarify defined terms within each profession underneath the code. If you look at the wording that's in there right now, under cosmetologist, the definition states that a cosmetologist may administer cosmetic treatment. It is the interpretation and position of our Board for Barbers and Cosmetology that means anybody that is a licensed cosmetologist is allowed to perform basic aesthetic services like a basic facial under that terminology. We actually had a bill a couple years ago about this specifically. So what we're asking is to change some language in the definitions under the profession of cosmetology to remove the term administer cosmetic treatment. If you look at the curriculum requirements and the training for cosmetology versus esthetician in the state of Virginia, they are not equivalent. Estheticians in the state of Virginia must perform over 150 live practices of basic facials in order to sit for the board.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask the witness if she has a copy of the substitute, the version that they just distributed today?
I do, yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. Sorry for interrupting.
I do have a copy, I'm sorry. So what we're asking at this time is that they clarify the definition to remove cosmetic treatment to not allow cosmetologists to administer cosmetic treatment. As it stands now, with a Board for Barbers and Cosmetology, the only way to change the interpretation of what that is to change the wording in the code itself. We've asked.
Continue.
Okay, sorry. If you're a licensed cosmetologist and you call the Board of Cosmetology right now and say, may I perform a basic facial? They are going to say yes. As an esthetician, if I call and say, why is that okay? They say it is the interpretation because the terminology says that a cosmetologist may administer cosmetic treatment. Their training does not sit for this. They don't learn this while they're in school. So if it's on the table to change the wording, this is a good time to do it.
Mr. Chairman?
I appreciate your thought process. I'm going to turn to the patron and see if she's agreeable to that. If she's not, then it's not on the table. It's not before us.
Yeah. Mr. Chair, as I said, this bill was solely intended to create the master barber license. The language that the witnesses just talked about is to change the current definition of cosmetologist, which was never my intention to get into. What I perceived to be a dispute between cosmetologists and anestheticians. If the committee would like to solve that problem, they can, but all I'm trying to do is create a master barber license.
I appreciate your opportunity that you've given us, but this is your bill,
Right.
and you're in charge of it.
I would prefer to just create a master barber license and somebody can work on fixing their problem
Next
later.
year, you can find somebody to introduce that bill. Senator Abbott.
Thank you very much.
And ask to clarify the witness, does making a master barber in any way affect those two definitions you talked about? Does having a master barber hurt?
Not at all.
Okay, thank you.
Not at all.
Okay. All right. Is there anyone who opposes a master barber? Hearing none. Is there a motion? Properly moved and second to report the bill. Open roll, please. That bill is reported 13-0.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Stanley. Senator Stanley, come on. Step it up, step it up.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Senate Bill 177.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Senate Bill 177 expands the list by which we determine as we approach the 250th anniversary of the Revolutionary War that will be occurring in 2025. It's recognizing 4,000 more documented graves without the need of special legislation to add each cemetery and site to this already installed code 10.1, to provide for the maintenance of those graves and the recognition of those graves. It's $5 per grave, which is a very small amount to honor the men and women, slaves, American Indians, all of those who made massive sacrifices in the founding of this nation. They have been identified through the Sons, the Virginia Society of the Sons of American Revolutions, to have been patriots and contributors to the cause of freedom in the American Revolution. And this bill seeks to recognize not only what they did, but also to maintain where they rest forever in peace.
I believe you have some amendments.
I guess I do, yeah.
Migo, would you report those amendments?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There are 3 amendments. The first one is on line 31, strike the capital "the." The second amendment is at the beginning of line 32, strike "Comptroller of the Commonwealth shall make no" and insert "no." And the third amendment is on line 33, after year, insert "shall be made."
Okay. Properly moved and seconded that we adopt those amendments. All in favor say aye. Aye. All right. Is there anyone here in opposition to whatever, Senate Bill 177?
It's probably the British.
All right. I think the staff is against it. I'm not sure. He's coming up fast. All right. Properly moved and seconded the bill. All right. Is there a second? All right. Properly moved that we report the bill and re-refer it to finance. Record your votes. Okay. All right.
Thank you.
That one is reported 14-0.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Appreciate it.
All right. Let's see. Any other patrons? All right. Where's he's? All right. I'm sorry. Thank you. Senator Openchain.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I've got Senate Bill 784, which maybe can be disposed of fairly quickly. This bill deals with rural structures. You know, we've dealt with that a couple of times over the decades where I am. We've got a lot of rural structures. And with the ag economy changing and some entrepreneurial uses arising in rural areas, these structures are being utilized for a variety of different purposes, which is putting a lot of stress on statewide building codes. You know, in Farm Central in Rockingham County, you know, we've got some efforts to make building codes apply to farm buildings. Buildings are being built for event centers, for farms, and there's been a lot of stress between localities and agricultural entrepreneurs. And while I think this bill would be a step in the right direction, I'm not quite sure that we're ready. And what I would ask the committee to consider is passing this bill by for the year, and I would ask the committee or the chairman if he would consider sending a request to the Virginia Cooperative Extension to review the status of farm building structures and report back, and to keep this dialogue alive, and ask them to address this with stakeholders and to address their concerns.
Someone
and
like to
to
make that motion?
So moved.
Properly moved and second that the bill be passed by for the year with a letter to the co-op, electric for the extension service.
And we'd like the wine industry and the beer industries to be invited to participate in that process.
All right. Any opposition to that motion? Hearing none. Record your votes. That one is reported 15-0.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee.
The motion is agreed to. All right. Do I miss any? Where's, all right. Senator Edwards.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Senate Bill 488 has to do with transferring responsibility for developing the fire code from the Board of Housing and Community Development to the Virginia Fire Services Board. In 2007, the General Assembly transferred responsibility for enforcement of the statewide fire prevention code from the Department of Housing and Community Development to the Virginia Department of Fire Programs. But at the same time, the development of the fire code was retained by the Board of Community Development, and therefore there's a disconnect here. I'd like to explain it further. The Secretary of Public Safety and Homeland Security, Brian Moran, is here to introduce the bill, and also then to bring in Mike Riley, who will explain the details of how the bill is designed.
Okay. Welcome.
Senator, members of the committee, I'm going to defer to Mike to walk through any particulars that the committee may have. But we are very much in support of Senator Edwards' bill.
Welcome.
Mike Riley is the Director of the Virginia Department of Fire Programs.
Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Senators. I'm the newly appointed Executive Director of Fire Programs, so it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for the time to speak to you. In my past life, I spent almost 40 years as a firefighter and fire marshal with the County of Fairfax. During that time, I did serve 8 years on the Virginia Fire Services Board, and 4 of those years, I was the Virginia Fire Services Board representative to the Department of Housing Community Development Board. The code as it currently stands is helped put together by the Virginia Fire Services Board with a consensus group of personnel. Our board consists of almost 50% citizens and 50% fire service representatives. That code is then sent to the Department of Housing, and the Housing Board basically has about a 14-member board. I sat on that board for 4 years, and they basically vote on to adopt that code. And that's the only code that is adopted by an agency outside of public safety. No other, I think, agency has their code developed by another agency within state government. Most of those votes that I sat on, I was the only vote that was voting for the fire code to move forward. The last code that just got adopted, again, was totally opposed by the fire service until it went over to the Department of Housing and Community Development, in which it was defeated. We were defeated, and it was moved forward, obviously, at one vote for the total board. So from that point, we want to talk about a consensus board, and that's exactly what Virginia Fire Services Board is. And we appreciate your efforts to set the record straight from 2007 and 2008 when the Fire Marshal's Office was sent over to Public Safety.
Okay, thank you. Any
Available for questions.
Witness, Senator Abbott.
Thank you, sir. Could you give an example of You said the position of the fire or emergency services had been defeated by the other board. Can you give us an example of what the differences might have been?
Sure. So a recent example, not recent, a couple of years ago, the fire code is a consensus code that's brought from the ICC code, which is a model code done at the national level. And at the national level, you have consensus from firefighters and home builders from a national consensus board. And then that is adopted by the Virginia Fire Services Board as the model code. And then Virginia amendments are given to that. In that model code adoption was sprinkler systems for newly constructed multifamily dwellings. The ink wasn't dry by the time it got to Virginia. The Fire Service Board approved it, adopted it, and moved it over to the Department of Housing Community Development, and it was struck from the board from even being mentioned or even having debates about it. So that's one example. It wasn't required to be retrofitting. It was really designed strictly for new construction to basically address new fire service code requirements that are going on nationwide.
Senator.
Get too much in the weeds or a particular example. So you're saying that even if you were building a new 300-unit building in Virginia, that there was opposition to putting sprinklers in that 300-unit building?
That's correct.
So there's no, okay, thank you.
There's no requirement at this point.
Thank you.
Oh, well, for high rises, you know, we have those and some does, but we're talking mostly multifamily dwellings. The high rises, it is required. We're talking like townhouses and things along those lines is what we were talking about specifically.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I do defer to the fire marshal from Loudoun County.
Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Linda Hale. I'm the Chief Fire Marshal for Loudoun County. I'm also representing the Virginia Fire Prevention Association here today. I don't want to be able to reiterate anything that the Director or the Secretary have said, but this proposed legislation will ensure the provision of a well-balanced approach to Virginia fire and life safety regulations while also maintaining the clear nexus between the statewide fire prevention code and public concerns and enforcement authority being located within the purview of the public safety and homeland security. Again, I want to reiterate that the transfer of authority for the promulgation of statewide fire prevention code from the Board of Housing to Community Development to the Fire Services Board would have no impact on the uniform statewide building code. Let me reiterate, it has no impact on the uniform statewide building code. The regulation concerning the hierarchy of the statewide fire prevention code as it relates to the uniform statewide building code remain clear and prohibit the fire code from influencing the manner and means of how the building is constructed. These regulations, which have a clear connection to development and economic concerns, will remain under the authority of the Board of Housing and Community Development and cannot be changed by any provisions of the statewide fire prevention code. So again, this is designed to be able to ensure that the promulgation of the statewide fire prevention code that lives and currently breathes under one secretariat, but is enforced under another. You have one secretary telling another secretary what to be able to do. It's designed to be able to realign it under the secretary in which the enforcement authority actually lies. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? All right. Did you wish to speak? Welcome.
Thanks, sir. My name is Glenn Dean, resident of Colonial Heights, retired from the fire service, and I'm representing only myself. The previous speakers have hit most of my points, so I'm down to just a couple sentences. One, Chief, is that this is going to be revenue neutral, zero impact. As stated by the previous speaker, it is sometimes claimed that to do something like Senate Bill 488 is going to increase the cost of housing, and that is totally baseless, because, as the previous speaker said, the authority is not there. The General Assembly, since the passage of the Statewide Fire Prevention Code Act of 1986, has effectively incorporated language that says that the fire code is not going to be used as a backdoor to affect building construction or the materials used in their design, erection, alteration, or repair. Thank you.
Thank you. Is anyone here in opposition to Senate Bill 488? Welcome. Can't play defense that way.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Craig Tolson. I'm the CEO of the Home Builders Association of Virginia. HBAV strongly opposes Senate Bill 488. The reason is we are in favor of the current code adoption process. The current process allows for an extended and deliberate code evaluation. The current board, the Board of Housing and Community Development, has 14 citizen members. These citizen members have experience in energy efficiency, fire safety, and building safety. The current code adoption process, as a matter of fact, has been recognized by many outside groups for outstanding development process in, again, energy efficiency, fire safety, and building safety. For example, the Insurance Institute for Business and Home Safety recognizes Virginia's process as the leader in building code safety for exemplary code adoption and enforcement programs. The current process allows for all stakeholder input. The ramifications of changing this process could add significant cost to housing in Virginia. We have also a builder and a fire official with us as well.
Thank you.
Anthony Clatterbuck.
Welcome.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Anthony Clatterbuck. I live in Madison County. My business is in Culpeper County, and I'm a 20-year volunteer in the fire and EMS system. I also just recently finished a 10-year term on the Board of Housing and Community Development. The entire 10 years I was involved in the Codes and Standards Committee. The last 4 years I chaired the Board of Housing. Now, I certainly appreciate and respect fire services. You know, some of my certifications come from them, but I think that we need to understand exactly where we are. Personally and professionally, I oppose this change, and I oppose it because of the nature of the code adoption system that we have today. We are recognized as one of the best, if not the best, processes in the nation. We're looked up to at the ICC, and we're looked up to for how we do this. We use work groups, we put stakeholders together, they vet the process. The only things that come before our board for a final decision are items that are non-consensus and that have to have a final decision where all of the stakeholders couldn't agree. And what Mr. Riley spoke to in the 2012 code process was the Fire Service Board vigorously advocated for mandatory sprinkler systems in all new housing, not just multifamily towns. Four-story towns already have mandatory sprinklers, and multifamilies, on many occasions, have fire sprinklers. But what the advocacy was for single families and all townhouses. The cost of implementing that was significant. And what the board authorized was to authorize voluntary sprinkler systems and invite those who wanted them to have them instead of making them mandatory throughout. And so we did that and a couple of other compromises. The code, the board that adopts the code has always tried to compromise and come up with relatively good solutions to make sure that everybody's concerns are met. But one of the key things in the code are health, safety, and welfare is critical. But also we have to house Virginians, and we have to do that with affordability. And if you begin to use a group that has a singular focus and doesn't keep all of those things in mind, the citizens of Virginia are going to be the ones who suffer.
All right, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Brian Gordon on behalf of the Virginia Apartment and Management Association and the Apartment and Office Building Association. I would reiterate the concerns of the preceding two speakers, but also note, in addition to the current system working very well and all stakeholders being at the table, our concern is that that is not the case if this was to be transferred over to the Fire Services Board, which is legislatively prescribed as a 15-member board with only one of those representatives representing the stakeholders that are impacted by those codes. And so we would ask for your opposition. Thank you.
Welcome. Okay. I'm sorry, Senator Evans.
Gordon, you're mentioning one representative. Right now, is there one fire services representative on the State Board of Housing Community Development?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. My understanding is that there is a designated spot for the fire services board to be represented on the Board of Housing and Community Development. But in addition to that, the only restrictions on the other seats are that they be one apiece from each of the congressional districts. So there is no restriction on them being able to be additionally represented on that board.
Okay, and just to follow up, Mr. Chair.
Senator Edwards.
On the other board, the Fire Services Board, I think you were complaining that there's only one representative of whom? Or did I have that backwards?
There would only
Were you
be-
saying that you're not represented well on the Fire Services Board? Was that what you were saying earlier, or no?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, it is.
Okay, I was just observing that on both boards, you seem to have the same situation, at least whether, by who's appointed or however. So, thank you.
And thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, there is no legislative restriction on additional seats being representative of that interest.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon. My name is Julie Walton. I am the Director of Community Development for Prince George County, and I'm here today speaking on behalf of the Virginia Building and Code Officials Association in opposition of this bill. Currently, the entire family of codes is promulgated through the Board of Housing, whether that's electrical, plumbing, mechanical, property maintenance, fire, or building. They're companion codes. The system we have, as others have stated, works well for coordination and the continuity of a development from start to finish to maintenance. The statewide fire prevention code is a maintenance code that takes effect after the construction of the building. They need to work together. They need to come through the process we have in place now, which, as others have mentioned, is widely recognized as one of the best processes in the nation. The other thing, we've mentioned that the one secretary is putting a code in another. I'd like to remind the board that the statewide fire prevention code is actually enforced in a lot of localities locally. So the fire marshal's office enforces it in localities that do not designate a fire official or fire marshal. So having our codes at the local level promulgated together and coordinated together with the citizen input at the board is very beneficial to the localities. Thank you.
Welcome.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Phil Abraham, representing the Virginia Association for Commercial Real Estate. We represent the commercial and industrial developers in Northern Virginia, Hampton Roads, and the greater Richmond areas. And for the reasons stated, we also oppose this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Edwards, was there a substitute for this bill?
There is not one presently.
Okay.
There was some discussion.
You want one?
You want to wrap it up, and as you do that, proper motion, if this is to be approved, is to go to finance.
The issue is this. There's nothing more important than fire prevention. And when there's a fire and it's your house, that's obviously the most important thing in your life. Right now, the fire marshals have responsibility in enforcing the fire code, but they have no input as a practical matter. They're losing 14-1 because the fire code is determined by the Board of Housing. And as I say, it's a 14-1 divide there. There needs to be balance. There's no question about it. You got to consider both the cost of housing as well as fire prevention. But right now, it's only one side. It's very one-sided. It's like this. And it needs to be balanced out. And that's what this bill is designed to do. Okay. And as you can see, the fire marshals are very concerned, as they should be. The Secretary of the Department of Public Safety and Homeland Security and his office, the administration is behind it because they see a tremendous imbalance here that needs to be fixed. You can't just lose 14-1 all the time and keep the public safe.
Okay, thank you. As I said before, if this is approved, it needs to go to finance. Is there a motion? Properly moved that the bill be reported and re-referred to finance.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator McPike.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On the motion, I'm going to R36 just for the discussion. I think this discussion has come up a number of different years. I'm probably one of the ones that have worn a number of the different hats involved in this discussion, both as a firefighter of 18 years as someone who's built commercial and apartment buildings and been involved in design construction, I can tell you works fairly well. Sometimes there's some clunkiness in that process and that coordination, but I think there needs to be a longer discussion. And if, depending on the actions of finance in this committee, I want to have some of that discussion with the stakeholders in the off year.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? Senator?
I have a substitute motion.
I'm not sure you can have a substitute and a substitute, but,
Call the pending question.
all right. The question has been called for. Go ahead and vote. This motion is to PBI.
Ayes 10, noes 4, 1 abstain.
Okay, the bill is PBI. Okay, any other patrons come in? All right. Senator Serval, you ready now? All right, let's go. To get him out of the way. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think that 722 is probably the quickest. I have a substitute on that.
Okay, attention 722.
Senate Bill 722 was inspired by a FOIA bill that we passed last year. The committee might remember that last year, in terms of FOIA, we passed a bill that made it clear that if there's some information in a government record which is subject to an exclusion, that the government agency has to redact the record instead of withholding the entire record. This bill simply applies that same principle to homeowners association documents. Homeowners and condo owners are allowed to, and co-op owners are allowed to request records of their HOA or their condo association. And this bill just makes clear that if they request a document that has exempt information, that information can be redacted, and it sets forth that the association can recover their costs costs associated with having to do that redaction. I've been working with the can put the sub in front of us, yeah.
You want to move this?
Yeah, I moved the substitute.
Properly moved and seconded that the substitute be adopted. All right, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I've been working with the community association folks to try and come up with some agreeable language, which is now reflected in this document. I think there's now peace in the valley.
Is there anyone here to speak in opposition to the bill? Hearing none. Is there a motion? Senator Evan.
Yeah, could I ask the patron a question about lines, the last of the new language on 58 through 60? The people who request the records who are members of the association are responsible now to pay for those copies that they would have previously gotten by paying or not paying?
By paying.
So that's the same policy there.
It's the same policy. Okay. They have to actually publish the policy in advance with regard to the other document requests, but this is not going to have them publishing the policy on redaction. That's
Thank you.
Part of our negotiation.
That completes your question. All right, the motion is to pass the substitute for 722. If no further discussion, the roll is open. That bill is reported 15-0.
Thank you. Why don't we do 627 next? That's probably the one with the next least. It's probably the quickest of the next two.
You want to reverse the vote on that one?
That one has to do with home inspectors, 627. So Senate Bill 627 has to do with liability disclaimers in home inspection contracts. Just to give the committee a little bit of legal background. So when you go to buy a house from somebody, the house contract frequently has an addendum on it. Not always. The addendum is an option that where you can the purchaser can require a home inspection before they purchase the property. There's also can be various add-ons to that inspection for like a radon inspection and termite and a couple other things. And typically somebody who maybe isn't, most consumers actually aren't really good at like looking through a house and checking it all out and making sure that, everything is right, the appliances work and the roof doesn't leak and there aren't repairs that needed. So they usually pay, $300 to $500 to get one of these inspections done. They get back a big fat report which says here are the problems, and they use that, they negotiate repairs, and then they buy the house. Well, under Virginia law, it's very hard, I would say virtually impossible, to sue a seller of a home if there's something wrong with the house after you buy it. It's called caveat emptor, buyer beware. The only time you can really sue a home seller is if they actively take steps to defraud you. So you have to show that, like, they painted the wall to cover things up, or they, really deliberately defraud you. Otherwise, you have no remedy. So the only way you can protect against that is get these home inspections done. 2 years ago, I think, maybe 3, we licensed home inspectors in this state, so now they have to have a license. And as part of those licensing regulations, the DPOR, Department of Professional Occupational Regulation, Board of Lead, Asbestos, and Home Inspectors, promulgated regulations requiring home inspectors to have $250,000 of liability insurance. So they are required, if they want to do these, by state law, to have that insurance, $250,000. In almost every home inspection contract that's signed, they've started putting these disclaimers in them that say that they can't be sued for more than what you pay them for the inspection, which is usually like $300 to $500. So even though we require them to have $250,000 of insurance, or the regulator requires them to have $250 insurance, you can only sue them for $200 to $300, $400 or whatever. That's it. It completely defeats the purpose of requiring them to have insurance, or requiring them to be responsible for their acts if they miss something. Sometimes they miss problems that can be big, and some are small, some are big. But all this bill says is that you can't use a liability disclaimer. And if the committee wants to say the liability disclaimer can't exceed whatever insurance is required by the regulations, that's fine with me too. I don't care. But you shouldn't be able to evade the insurance requirement by putting a thing in your contract saying you can't be sued for more than like $500. And that's the point of the bill. It's completely defeated, the existing system completely defeats the purpose of our regulations and the insurance that they're required to carry. And it isn't fair to home purchasers. It basically leaves home purchasers, people who buy homes, completely without a remedy. I mean, you hardly can do anything to make sure that the house you're buying, the biggest investment of your life, is in good shape when you buy it. That's the point. So, and I have an attorney here who does a whole lot more real estate litigation than me, who wants to speak to it briefly, and I think there's somebody opposed to.
Expect so. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Chairman, members of the committee. My name is John Altmiller. I'm a trial attorney. I've been so for 25 years in the Commonwealth of Virginia. For the last 20, I've focused in real estate. So I see a lot of these issues and discuss them with not just my colleagues, litigators, but also everybody in the business, real estate agents, settlement attorneys, settlement agents. And it really is a problem if the only thing standing between a purchaser and knowing the condition of the house is this professional that they hire, because there is caveat emptor, and it's a very strong doctrine in Virginia, extremely strong. It's so strong that even if a seller makes a misrepresentation to a buyer, the law says that even then the seller is not liable if it was something equally within the power of the buyer to find out. And it's fairly universal that you have these home inspection addenda, and they're employed. It's very standard. So somebody comes in and they spend $300 to $500 to find out the condition of a home that might be $400,000, $500,000, $1 million. I mean, it's a complex system. And as an attorney, I deal with all the time. Every few weeks or month, I get a call from somebody who has one of these issues. And at least, the senator says that they've been putting these in recently. I've been doing this for 20 years, and it's been in a standard for 20 years that there's a limit of liability. Nobody else can limit their liability. Settlement attorneys can't. You can't. We can't. Settlement agents don't. You can't limit your fiduciary duties. Real estate agents, if they could, certainly don't. And so everyone else is potentially going to be sued. Believe me. Senator says you can't sue sellers. Believe me, you can. You may not be successful, but as somebody who defends sellers, they get sued. The agents get sued. I've seen settlement attorneys and agents get sued. because people get into this and they think that there's some kind of protection for them, and they're shocked when they find out that there isn't. And I'm usually the person who's advising them that they really have no protection. And I think that's the concern that's looking to be addressed.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else to speak in support? Is anybody here in opposition to whatever the number of the bill is?
627.
627. Thank you.
627. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Rob Bohannon with Hunt and Williams on behalf of the Virginia Association of Real Estate Inspectors. We're the state trade association for the home inspection industry. I want to make several points about the bill. There's sort of three things that could likely happen if this bill were to pass, none of which are helpful. As Senator Serval said, as part of their licensure, home inspectors are required to carry $250,000 worth of liability insurance. If this bill were to pass, it's likely that, number one, the insurers could drop a home inspector from coverage, which is not good. Obviously, then they can't meet their licensure requirements. Number two, their rates could increase substantially before that, because now you would be opening them up to all kinds of additional liability that they're currently not open to. And then that would, in turn, raise the rate of that home inspection likely for the home buyer. As Senator Serval said, those inspections are about $300 to $500. I can imagine that multiplying exponentially if that liability insurance were to be raised significantly, because most of our home inspectors are solo operators, maybe one inspector, maybe two, small businesses that can't absorb that kind of cost anywhere else. I think it's important to understand, too, what a home inspection really is. It's a pretty limited inspection. The code defines it pretty narrowly, looks at heating, cooling, plumbing, electrical systems, structural components, foundation, roof. It's basically a snapshot of the home at that given point of time. One way to think of it is like a general practitioner. You go into a general practitioner for your overall health, and then what a home inspection might do is reveal, hey, your HVAC system has some age on it. You might want to get it checked out by an HVAC professional. Assesses the age of the system, if it's functioning properly. Some common things that if this were to pass, you could open a home inspector up to being sued on. One of the things that our members say has happened a number of times is you test an AC unit in June when you come in for the home inspection. It's 78 degrees outside. AC unit works fine. A month later, it gets to be 100, and you've got the AC cranked down to 65, and you blow it. All of a sudden, it doesn't work, and you just tested it, and it did work. Then you can have someone coming back after the home inspector on that. There's all kinds of things that would go wrong with a house. Most things have a limited lifespan of them, but then you would see people coming back to the home inspector and suing them on opening up the liability way more than it's supposed to be now. So for those reasons, we oppose the bill. Happy to take any questions.
Is anyone else here in opposition to Senate Bill 627? Any questions? Do you want to wrap it up?
Yeah, I mean, all this would do is incentivize them to be careful. Right now, they don't have to worry about being careful because the most you can sue them for is like $300 or $500. I mean, back when Senator Peterson practiced law with me, he gave me a $50 million case once, right when he went on vacation. And the case was going to be litigated in 30 days. And I called up Chap and I said, what in the world are we doing this for? And I said, we have a $5 million malpractice policy. And he said, so what? I was like, well, we get sued for $50 million. And he said, then don't screw up. And I said,
Back to today.
So I don't want him to take my house. But my point is that if you have liability, it makes you be careful. And right now, they don't have to worry about being careful because most you can sue them for is $300, $400, $500. And so, if we're going to require $250,000 of insurance, let's make the insurance have some teeth in it and have value to the people for which we passed this licensing system for. So I mean, I think it just gives our law teeth.
Okay. Is there a motion? Properly moved and seconded that Senate Bill 627 be reported. Record your votes. Bill does not report.
Mr. Chairman, could I make a request on that?
A bigger request?
Well, no. Could I ask maybe the committee consider referring it to DPOR and have them look at it?
If there is a motion to do so.
You don't have to do that.
Open the vote. All right, we will reconsider it now. The motion is
Pass by for the year and recommit to.
Send a letter to DPOR.
okay.
We'll make that motion.
Is that properly moved and seconded? That
Board of
be-
Lead and Asbestos.
That the bill be PBI'd with a letter to DPOR to look at the issue. All in favor, say aye.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
That
Okay.
one, that motion passes. You could have saved us a lot of time if you proposed that.
I thought I had a chance. I don't know. Thought I had a shot. So,
Okay.
And the last one's 707, and that one has a substitute.
All right. Is there a motion to adopt the substitute? All right.
I have a copy of it.
In favor, say aye. All right.
Thank you.
Is this any better than the original one?
Oh, yes. I hope I got you a lot of emails for your constituents with my original one.
Okay, hit it.
Okay, Senate Bill 707 is a spin on, I think, bills you've heard for the last 2 years. And the original bill that I wrote was much broader. This one is extremely narrow, and it has to do with child care. So you all heard me say a little bit on the floor today, but child care, especially in Northern Virginia, is extremely expensive. There's been numerous studies that have said it's the most expensive place to get child care in the United States of America. And one of the ways that child care is made less expensive if it's provided in the home. And as soon as you start providing child care in the home, you start getting into HOA issues. And this bill, by the way, only deals with HOAs, not condos and not co-ops. So some of the problems that have arisen in Northern Virginia, at least I'm not in Northern Virginia, and if they've happened in other parts of the state, I'm not aware of it yet, but it's probable, is that some child care providers have run into situations where they've gone out and they've gotten their state license, they get a local license, because Fairfax and Prince William, probably Loudoun as well, and Arlington, Alexandria all have local licenses as well. They get a zoning approval for an accessory use, because all those localities allow child care as an accessory use under the zoning ordinance to occur in your home. And then they start operating, and then lo and behold, time passes, and then somebody on the HOA decides that they want to start enforcing HOA rules against them, which they either don't enforce or don't consistently enforce, or that people didn't know existed. So the original bill had to do with HOA rules that prohibited home businesses, and instead of affecting every home business in a community, what this bill simply says now is that if a child care, or if it's an HOA that is in a locality where child care is licensed by the locality, and that's probably only a handful of localities in the state. I suspect most localities in the state don't locally license child care. If that locality classifies home-based child care as an accessory use, which again, most localities don't, mainly only the really urbanized ones do, then an HOA can prohibit child care in that HOA. It says they can if their declaration says they can. So if their declaration, the Constitution for the HOA, says that they have the power to ban child care, they can do that. They just have to pass a rule that specifically bans child care. And that does not require some super duper majority of 80% or 75% or whatever. Most HOAs allow them to pass rules, whether that's, you got regulating where you have your dog poop or what color your shutters are, or, whether you can put the American flag on your house. Most HOAs, you can do that by about 50% vote, and either do an architectural standards committee or the board can pass a rule. This says that they can do that as long as they pass a specific rule that says child care, so that when people purchase their home, they see that rule, they see child care is not allowed, and they know it in advance. A lot of these folks who this affects negatively tend to be non-native English speakers. In Northern Virginia, a lot of people that open up home child cares are immigrant families that come in and they buy, and one of the ways they're able to afford a home is the husband works and the wife stays at home and cares for children and earns money to help pay for the house that way, and frequently that's some of the only jobs they can get. And so it's important that this be clear, that it be disclosed in advance, and because a lot of people, when they read home business, they don't think child care, especially when it's an accessory use and it's allowed. So that's the idea, and I have a couple people here to testify in favor of the bill.
All right, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee, for allowing me to speak. My name is Mary Braxton. I'm a licensed family child care provider, or was a licensed family child care provider in both Fairfax County and Prince William County for over 27 years. I did it as a way to earn an income and have my children home with me at the same time. I served on the Virginia Alliance of Family Child Care Associations for 20 years. That is an association representing family child care providers across the state of Virginia. And this has continually been a problem for many, many years. I'm also with the Family Child Care Advocacy Coalition currently, and I currently work with Child Care Network in Fredericksburg, Virginia. We are a nonprofit organization working to represent and help family providers or families looking for child care, as well as child care providers in over 25 cities and counties. And again, I can tell you this is happening in and across the large area of Virginia. The worst thing to get is a phone call from a parent seeking child care, and in their area, there is no regulated child care option. Their only option is to put their child in an unregulated setting. That unregulated setting will have no background checks, no first aid CPR training, and let's be honest, for the last several years, we've been looking at legislation and hearing these parents and grandparents tell their stories of how their children have died in unregulated child care settings. Well, in order to fully, support regulated child care to occur, we need to look at the barriers that are in place currently and see if we can address those and correct it. A couple examples of it happening. There's a provider, Prince William County. She operated for 25 years in her community, 25 years as a licensed family child care provider. Different HOA board came in, it wasn't a problem. As the board turned over for 25 years, all of a sudden, the current board had a problem. You need to close down and you have 30 days to do it. She battled and she went through $8,000 worth of funds until she couldn't battle it anymore and she closed her doors. Another provider.
I think we understand the argument.
Okay, thank you.
Does anyone else wish to speak in support of this?
Thank you.
All right, is anyone here in opposition? You were standing up. Did you want to speak for it?
We have two more for support.
All right, come on up very quickly.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. My name is Serena No, and I'm here today on behalf of Child Care Aware of Virginia, a nonprofit organization that works statewide to help families find child care and provide training and business support to the child care provider workforce. We support Senator Sorvel's bill, which would help ensure that families with young children have as many safe, legal options as possible when searching for childcare. Childcare is hard for parents to find and even harder to afford, and too often parents have difficulty finding licensed childcare in their communities. Currently, the state sets licensing policy. Any individual who passes a background check and cares for 5 or more unrelated children can obtain a license to operate a childcare business out of their home. Licensing provides some basic rules to ensure that children are safe. It's not a paperwork exercise. When HOAs set restrictive policies that prohibit the legal operation of licensed childcare, it's the families who suffer. It means that they have to leave their communities to find childcare elsewhere. For some families, that leads them to find unlicensed childcare, either within the neighborhood, which flies under the radar, or outside the community. Nearly 70 children, mostly infants, have died in unlicensed childcare in Virginia in the last 10 years.
Okay.
We don't need...
I think we get the point of what you're saying. Yes, we need more child care, licensed child care. Yes. Welcome.
Hello, Mr. Chairman and committee. This is Neelam Abbas. I have the state licensing from 2005, and I moved 2011 in my new community, but two last community, they don't have, actually, I know about the HOA in 2011. I moved in there in my community, and 2014, I got a notice. After 2 years operating the child care, you have to shut down in 2 weeks because you have a business. I said, what kind of business I have? Then I find out this is a child care. So there 3 years I battled. I don't want to say my whole 3-year story, but I want to just share my worst part that they make me to go to take the 100 signature from the month of January and February. So I wasn't thinking that it will be so much hard, but whenever I go to the people house, I can't come back, sit in my house and just cry because people don't open the door. I think how I can make the people open the door. So that's why I make my banner. I put in my here and make my science fair board project. Here I put my all qualification or all my request, and when people just knock the door and open the window, I just say, hey, 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 hey. I was just begging them,
Okay.
please listen to me, please. And some people then finally start open the door because they know I'm not a seller, I'm a homeowner.
Okay, thank
Oh
you
my
very
goodness.
much.
So month of January, February to carry all that stuff, go people the house and take 100 signature. That was the worst part of my life. I have 4 children. They help me a lot. My husband has to go to the work and 5 days I work and 2 days I just go begging for the people, listen to me because I told them I have a state license because people ask me one question. If state permission you, state give you the license, you have all qualification, and county gave you the zoning permit, everything, who we are?
Okay, thank you.
So I need that question answered too, that why I have to begging the people if I have all that
We
requirement
have other
completed.
legislation. I think everybody
Everything.
understands the issue. Okay?
Yes, yes.
All right.
So, okay.
It's-
Okay. I
Thank
have
you
a
for your
lot of,
passion.
but
I
okay.
appreciate that.
Thank
All
you
right.
very much.
Is there anyone in opposition to the bill?
Mr. Chairman, Pia Trigiani, on behalf of Community Associations Institute, we have 4 speakers from 4 homeowners associations, presidents of Cascades in Loudoun County, Westridge in Prince William County, Stone Ridge in Loudoun County, and Brander Mill in Chesterfield County to speak to the issues and concerns. We are not opposed to daycare. We are opposed to businesses that exceed what is considered a home business. We do not agree respectfully with the senator. We do not believe a rule is sufficient enough to allow an association to restrict the activities or to moderate the activities. Time and time again, in the courts in Virginia are ruling that authority for rulemaking has to be based on the recorded documents. So any change and any moderation that would happen with respect to the conduct of these businesses could not happen by rule alone. It would have to be in the recorded declaration. But I'd like to invite these gentlemen, first Matt Durham, who's the president of Cascades.
Welcome.
Mr. Chair, Senators, I'm going to amend my prepared remarks based on the substitute. My name is Matt Durham, as Pia said. I'm the volunteer president of the Cascades Community Association, which is about a 2,500-acre planned residential community along the Potomac in both Loudoun and Fairfax counties. Cascades is a multiple award-winning HOA and has roughly 20,000 residents. We're also unique because we're very ably represented by 2 senators, Senator Wexler and Senator Favolas. We have a few things unique about us. It's very much my honor and privilege to testify today. Thank you for the opportunity to express my opposition to Senate Bill 707. Our governing documents, considered to be model examples by many experts in the industry, were drafted to create flexibility while also establishing limited restrictions on the use of property and conduct of our residents and owners. That structure has served our community well for nearly 3 decades. Senate Bill 707 substantially harms our ability to self-govern, according to the documents we inherited from the developer who drafted them. These documents provide protections, which we understand some consider limitations, that our owners and residents expect will be followed by all. If adopted and enacted into law, the bill could lead to the residential nature of our community substantially shifting towards commercial use, something we're exceedingly concerned about. Cascades has home-based businesses, including childcare, and the uses work well. We've received little objection from owners and residents. These home daycares include licensed facilities, and the HOA routinely receives notice from local zoning offices concerning proposed daycare home uses. We've never raised objection to them. We're not opposed to home-based businesses, but we are opposed to this bill because of the restrictions it puts on us. Thank you very much for your time, and I urge you to oppose the bill.
Welcome.
Mr. Chairman, Senators, thank you for the opportunity to talk to you today and urge you to vote no on this bill. My name is Tom Burrell, and I've served on HOA boards for over 20 years, almost consecutively, currently serving as president of two different homeowners association boards. One is the Westridge Swim and Racket Club located in Prince William County and consists of 1,530 homes, single-family townhouse condominiums and apartments. The other is a modest gated community of 40 single-family homes in the city of Fairfax. This bill allows commercial enterprise without regard to the character and nature of the neighborhood, and it could destroy any hope for quiet enjoyment of property through increased traffic, noise, strain on common facilities, and potential liability. This bill also erodes the ability of communities to self-govern as intended and mandated by their governing documents. While I understand the scope of the original bill has been reduced dramatically, I still believe that the best judge, if you will, for allowing any type of commercial activity in a residential community are the owners who live in that community. HOA boards are the stewards of the resources necessary to maintain a high standard for quality of life and best situated to evaluate the impact on the neighborhood. Therefore, I strongly urge you to vote no on Senate Bill 707. Thank you.
Welcome.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I'm Mike Rhodes. I'm here today on behalf of the Stone Ridge Association and our board of directors. We're a 15-year-old community of over 3,000 homes in about 1,000 acres in southeastern Loudoun County and Senator Black's district. And I've served on the board for 11 years and been president for the past 2. And I'll be brief. Mr. Chairman, the residents are best suited to determine what types of home-based businesses are or are not suited for their particular community. As a longtime member of the Homeowners Association Board, I can tell you that we have had numerous requests for home-based businesses, including many child care providers, and we permit child care, and we've never denied a single request. Mr. Chairman, simply put, there's nothing wrong with Section 513.2 of the POA Act as written, and on behalf of Stone Ridge, I just ask that you deny the SB 707.
Okay. Does that, Jack, are you standing there for a reason?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I was waiting for all the homeowner associations to finish.
Good afternoon again. My name is Greg Pearson. I represent, I'm serving on the Brandonville Board of Directors. I think it's obvious that large HOAs such as ours would oppose something that goes contrary to our documents. Last year, thanks to a request by Delegate Lee Ware, the State Attorney General's office ruled that a specific clause in our documents is legal. It prohibits in-home businesses that generate foot traffic of customers or clients to the doorsteps of single-family homes in residential zoning. If approved, Bill 707 will negate the contract signed by the owners of those 3,800 homes. I urge you to reject this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Mr. Chairman, John Rust on behalf of the Virginia Association of Community Managers. I will be brief. I'll associate my remarks with Ms. Trisciani. I would simply say that in looking at the substitute, I'm concerned, and Senator Sherville and I differ on this, that it appears that the substitute is overriding the declaration unless you in fact pass a rule. We think the declaration has to control in these things. That's what the basis of the condominium is. We urge you to oppose the bill.
Thank you. All right. Has everything been said that needs to be said?
Pretty much. I don't agree with Pia and Mr. Rust. I mean, the last sentence says they can do this to the extent the declaration says they can do it. It doesn't override the declaration. It says they can only do it if the declaration says they can do it. But I guess we disagree about that.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion when appropriate.
Now is a good time.
I'd like to make a motion that we PBI this.
Is there a second? Properly moved and seconded that Senate Bill 707 be PBI'd. Any further discussion? Hearing none, record your votes.
Ayes 10, noes 5.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Senator Locke, you had one.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to begin with Senate Bill 348.
348. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, Senate Bill 348 has to do with the Virginia Lottery. I introduced this bill to make the lottery draw games such as Mega Millions and Powerball more accessible to people who make most of their daily purchases through apps on their phones or tablets. Expanding the breadth of appeal of these lottery games increases the funding available to K through 12 education. My bill provides for Virginia Lottery to control entry of and to regulate any company that seeks to become a digital vendor of lottery drawing games. There is no financial impact to Virginia Lottery as they may set application fees to cover their costs of performing these functions. Many of you have probably heard from current lottery retailers who oppose this bill out of fear that it might reduce their sales of lottery tickets. Retailer sales in Georgia and Michigan increased after these states introduced their own apps for drawing game sales. We should not let unsubstantiated fears reduce our opportunities to increase funding for education. Education funding is the sole reason for the existence of Virginia Lottery in the first place. There are 2 line amendments, and I would like to ask that these line amendments be reported.
Let me go.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The first amendment is on line 63 after upon strike registering with and insert approval of their registration by. The second amendment is on line 216 after B, strike the remainder of line 216 through 219 and insert any applicant may sell drawing game tickets over the internet when the department notifies the applicant that its registration has been approved.
Mr. Chairman.
Properly moved and seconded that those amendments be adopted. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay.
Mr. Chairman, these amendments address a concern that was expressed by Virginia Lottery that a digital vendor would begin selling tickets when they file their registration application. With these amendments, sales cannot begin until after the registration has been approved by Virginia Lottery. I have with me David Ogburn and Jeff Allen. They can expand on any comments and answer your questions.
Okay. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is David Ogburn, representing today Lottery.com. Thank you, Senator Locke. I want to focus for a minute on the safeguards that are built into this bill. I'm going to go through them. I'll give you the line numbers if you're interested in following. So digital vendors must, at line 209, have their registration approved by the Virginia Lottery. At 253, they must be bonded in an amount set by the Virginia Lottery. Line 184, they must undergo a background check by Virginia Lottery. Line 370, have a specific trust account for the deposit of ticket proceeds. Line 262, have an independent financial audit performed annually and provide a copy to Virginia Lottery. And line 263, have a system in place to prevent sales to minors or to persons located outside of Virginia, have those systems tested annually, and provide a copy of the test results to Virginia Lottery. The last 2 testing and auditing requirements are over and above what's required of retailers today. Line 268, Virginia Lottery may suspend, revoke, or refuse to renew a registration pursuant to its rules. Line 268, Virginia Lottery may fine a digital vendor for violating its rules, a power it does not have over retailers. Virginia Lottery appended some comments to the impact statement produced by DPB. I'd like to take just one moment to address the 4 points that were at the end of the impact statement that was released yesterday. The first comment is that the current law says that a retailer can't have its primary purpose for business to sell lottery tickets. That's understandable. We didn't want to create gaming houses. You go, you buy gasoline, you buy Coke, you buy cigarettes. We changed that because Virginia Lottery.com sells tickets through an app. You can't sell Cokes, cigarettes, and gasoline through an app. It's a different entity. That should not apply. The second, it says it would continue to prohibit lottery from selling lottery tickets online. The lottery does sell subscriptions to tickets. It's a minimum of $20 that you have to put in. It's a minimum of 2 weeks or 4 draws. If Virginia Lottery would like to expand their current capability to sell through an app, we would consider that a friendly amendment, and that was not raised when we discussed the bill with Virginia Lottery last week. The other point I'd make there, though, is that why would we take education money and use it to develop an app that already exists by a commercial vendor, a private party, that's already being used in 5 other states and seems to be working very well? Why would we spend potentially millions of dollars that would have otherwise gone to education to develop that in Virginia when it exists and there's literally no charge to use it? Lotterycut.com would be treated like a retailer.
Okay.
The other comment in here in the impact statement was addressed by the amendment that was just adopted. So a digital vendor would not be able to sell tickets until their registration had been approved. The last point they make is that the proposed legislation may pose a risk that players may lose faith and confidence in the security and integrity of lottery products. There's just simply no evidence of this. The system that Lottery.com uses to sell tickets in 5 states now, other states pending, has not produced any problems. I'm going to defer some more information on that to Jeff Allen from Lottery.com. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Welcome. Thank you. Tell us only what we haven't heard.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Jeff Allen. I'm the Vice President of Strategy at Lottery.com. In March of 2015, Lottery.com was founded with the intent of filling a gap which existed with the current lottery and their way of selling tickets, whereas millennials prefer to use their discretionary spending on things such as fantasy sports, such as social gaming, Candy Crush Saga, and so on, at the detriment of the lottery's revenues and the state's education budget. Due to that, the company was founded with the intent to start selling digital versions of Powerball, Mega Millions, similar multi-state games. To that extent, we launched our service in New Hampshire in July of 2016, and since then have also launched in Texas, Minnesota, North Dakota, and we're currently doing a build-out to launch in Oregon. Since that time, we're proud of the fact that we've received 0 complaints for our service in all of the tickets that we've sold. And we're eager to enter into the Virginia market as well. And with that, we will be establishing a presence here. We will be providing 10 new full-time jobs, starting at $28 an hour with full benefits. To that extent, we also recruit veterans very significantly. Our entire operational force is actually made up of veterans, and we will continue to do that in Virginia. We feel that we can probably bring, in the first year, $25 million in additional revenue to the state through additional lottery ticket sales. And that is a number which we've received a certain amount of skepticism on, and I'm happy to expand on it. Looking at the lottery's own fiscal impact statement, they state that the current subscription services of the Virginia Lottery generate between $8 to $10 million in sales annually, and they do that with a player base of just under 13,000 players. Currently, across all of our active markets, we have 300,000 registered players, and we've done that with actually very, very little marketing. We feel we could probably bring a significant increase in players to the Virginia market, and to capture what is now 8 to 9% we consider increase over current Powerball and Mega Millions sales would not be a substantially difficult achievement. So that $25 million is probably not too far out of line with what we expect reality to bring. That said, there are other states that are moving forward with similar legislation. Currently, New Jersey has already passed a law and has sent out to public comments regulations to adopt a similar lottery-type courier law. Likewise, New York has today just actually released from the governor's office to send for comment an additional set of regulations that are similar. So there's a certain domino effect happening within the industry right now. And we hope that Virginia will also continue to move forward with this type of momentum we're seeing within the industry.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will be briefer than the boss. My name is Ed Van Petten with Lottery.com. I have previously served in Kansas as a Deputy Attorney General. I've been Executive Director of the Kansas Lottery for 11 years and Minnesota Lottery for 4 years. I have launched internet initiatives in the past, and I've done very extensive research worldwide with regard to the effect on retail markets. I have found no retail market in the world, and I've in-depth researched Canadian and all North American U.S. lotteries that have launched internet initiatives. I have found no state whatsoever that has had an adverse effect on retail markets. In the state of Michigan, their first year was $120 million in internet sales, an increase at the brick and mortar establishments of 6%. The big fact for state government is this costs you nothing. It costs the state nothing, it costs the lottery nothing, it costs the retailers nothing. Why not give it a try? It makes no sense. Thank you.
Okay. Is there anyone in opposition to Senate Bill 348? Welcome.
Good afternoon. My name is Mike O'Connor, representing Virginia's petroleum marketers and convenience store operators. In looking at the supporting statements that are put out by the lobbyists here, their message is twofold. One is that we're lagging behind the other states, that we're backwards for not going into this, and number two, that we're leaving money on the table. Those are both incorrect. They mention several states. Texas has no lottery.com. Texas has no internet lottery. North Dakota, same thing. Oregon, same thing. Minnesota, which they just mentioned, as the gentleman did, experimented with internet lottery, and their legislature banned it in 2015 completely. Let's talk about New Hampshire, the one place they are operating. First year, there were these draw games, total of $32 million. Lotto.com, their total was 204,491. That's how many tickets they sold, 0.6%. How we're going to get $22 million in Virginia from granted, Virginia's a lot larger than New Hampshire, but New Hampshire is no model. And if it is a model, it's going in the opposite direction. I think the one thing I would also point out, under their system, you can't pick your own numbers. Most Virginia players want to pick their own numbers. They have to pick the ones that are signed by Lotto.com. I would say that one of the estimates that came out certainly doesn't consider the lost jobs, the lost sales, the lost incidental sales from these people who supposedly have such a great desire to go buy lottery tickets on the internet. So for that, we would respectfully ask that you PBI the bill.
Okay, thank you. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Bill Janis here on behalf of the Family Foundation, speaking in opposition to Senate Bill 348. Senator Locke, I think, clearly stated the explicit purpose of the legislation was to expand the breadth and appeal of the Virginia lottery. The witnesses for Lottery.com have said they want to expand the current player base. They want to increase participation by millennials by offering this new type of gaming for the Virginia lottery. And the last witness for Lottery.com went so far as to say, this costs the state nothing. It's a no-brainer. Why wouldn't you do it? Well, let's look at the costs. The former director of the Virginia Lottery, Paula Otto, wrote a column in the Virginia Pilot on the 13th of March 2016 in which she said, quote, "For some, however, gambling's appeal can become a dangerous addiction, one that goes far beyond a perceived lack of self-control. It's a destructive disease with the power to ruin lives and careers, destroy families, and lead people to bankruptcy, prison, and even suicide." She went on to say, "But for some, gambling grabs hold like a drug, and unlike harmful substances, you can't smell gambling on somebody's breath or test for it in the bloodstream." There are costs involved with the expansion of gaming in the Commonwealth of Virginia by expanding the breadth and appeal of this lottery and to introduce it to a broader player base. And these costs are not just societal costs and not just costs to the state, but they're individual costs and they're the costs of ruined lives, okay? It's why, for these reasons, in recognition of these costs, that the Virginia Lottery currently has a problem gambling hotline. They produce public service announcements, videos, and brochures, and a web page, www.virginialottery.com, Play Responsibly, in which they point out and they try to increase understanding and awareness of the potential addiction problem of these games. Virginians can already gamble online. They can already play the Mega Millions and the Powerball online. They can already buy these in most retail merchants. We oppose this because we don't believe that this costs the state nothing. We don't believe it costs individuals in the Commonwealth nothing. And we believe by expanding the breadth and appeal of this game and by expanding the current player base, you're going to expand the pathologies that inherently go along with it. And for these reasons, Family Foundation would ask you to vote against the bill.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chuck Duvall. I'm here on behalf of 7-Eleven and our 700 franchisees across the state. 7-Eleven was there at the beginning of the lottery, and we've worked the entire time to make the lottery grow, and we've been a big partner with the lottery. If you approve this bill today, what you're going to do is you're going to make one vendor real happy and probably one retailer real happy. The rest of the retail community is going to take it in proverbial what. The lottery is not a moneymaker for retailers. We don't make money off the lottery. We make money off the foot traffic. If the people don't come into the store, we don't make that money, i.e. sales tax revenues decrease. We talked about, these people are talking about $27 million going to the education fund. What's going to happen with the sales tax that go down on the other end? The lottery itself is taking steps to bring an app online, but that app will work in cooperation with their retail partners. Now, I know some of you are sitting up there, and I think I've talked about everybody on that dais about this bill. And some of you are saying, well, we live in an age where we do everything on our phones. We do a lot on our phones, but you all have a responsibility to pay attention to your constituents and to your neighbors. And I think your constituents and your neighbors, a lot of whom work in retail establishments, a lot of whom receive the benefits of working in those retail establishments, would tell you this is an ideal that time has not come in Virginia. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Eddie Ayla, Virginia Assembly Independent Baptist. I'd like to identify my comments with the Family Foundation. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Locke, you want to wrap it up?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Lottery.com is operating in Texas, Oregon, New Hampshire, and Minnesota, so those statements were not truthful. This is a great opportunity to expand the customer base here in Virginia. Millennials use apps, and they love to use their phones and apps. Those who use 7-Eleven will continue to use 7-Eleven and go in to buy lottery tickets. And this is not expanding to use scratch-offs or anything like that. This is for Mega Millions and Powerball. And why not capitalize on this new demographic for the benefit of education? And let us not forget that. And that is the purpose. So thank you, Mr. Chairman. I ask that you pass Senate Bill 348.
If the bill passes, it will require that it go to finance. Is there a motion? Senator Evans. Sure.
I don't know if your witnesses all had left yet, or if Ms. Gonzalez is still. Okay, great. So, sir, you had mentioned that you had programs so it doesn't get to children. And my niece is 11, or actually she's 13. She's got an iPhone. And I bought this at 7-Eleven, but I'm wondering, she has a credit card hooked up with it. Her dad, my brother-in-law, lets her buy some apps with it on his card. What would you do to see that she doesn't buy tickets on her phone? How could you screen that?
Mr. Chairman, Senator, thank you for the question. We actually have a very robust system of KYC, or Know Your Customers, built within the application. What happens is, when you do sign up for the service, the first thing we do is verify your identity. That happens through LexisNexis, a very trusted third party in consumer protection. So that information is sent to them. They send us back a consumer confidence score, which says that you are who you say you are, you're located where you say you are, and that also you're of age to play. Now, that can differ by state. Most of the time it's 18, some states are 21. Once we verified that, we do further geolocationing because, of course, to stay in line with federal regulations, we need to make sure if you're buying a Virginia lottery ticket, you're based in Virginia at the time that you buy it. So that is the position that we've taken on verifying that users are eligible to play in the state where they're playing. And we think that actually goes far beyond the current systems which are in place, for example, kiosks at airports where you can buy lottery tickets. So we've gone far beyond that. And speaking specifically to the area of addiction, we have industry-leading software built in our application to prevent addiction that looks at how many times you're playing, how much you're spending. There's hard caps put on the limit of tickets you can buy. This is something that can't be done with paper tickets. I mean, you cut me off at one 7-Eleven, I go down the street to the next one and I buy more.
Senator.
Questions. You said that you limit or that you could limit people who are addicted. Is
Yes.
there a limit in these other states?
Yes, there are. So we put a hard cap on each draw of $50 or 25 tickets per drawing. There's no real good reason why, unless you were administering a pool, that someone would need to buy more than 25 tickets per draw. But also, we look at how often you're checking your application. We're not looking at it, but the analytics within the app themselves are analyzing how often are you looking at your app, how often are you checking the numbers, how often are you buying tickets. And at a certain point, it triggers a flag which then says, you may need to seek help. And so we have partnered with some nonprofits in this area that we can refer people to.
And there's an app for that?
Yes, exactly.
And last question was, you referred to the fact that you can know who someone is. So if you don't have to explain the detail, but if you have confidence that if my niece has her phone paid for by my brother-in-law, even though, and listed as his second phone or whatever,
right,
that you can tell that it's
Right.
not a 13-year-old.
If you've ever gone online to do something, for example, like check your credit report, where it comes back and it makes you answer a few verification questions, what street were you associated with, what's the last four of your social, these are things that we use to verify, and that's the LexisNexis system.
That completes your questions. All right. Was there a motion?
Move to report.
Properly moved and seconded that the bill be reported and re-referred to finance. Open the rolls. Okay. Bill is not reported.
Thank you. I have Senate Bill 198.
All right. $198.
In 2017, the General Assembly approved the passage of House Bill 1547, dealing with historical African-American cemeteries established before 1900. And Senate Bill 198 would like to add historical African-American cemeteries, adding grave sites in Portsmouth, Virginia, specifically the African-American Historic Mount Calvary Cemetery Complex, which would add approximately 266 grave sites to this part of the code.
And that would be in the same terms as the rest of it.
Yes.
Is anyone in opposition to Senate Bill 198? The proper motion would be to report and refinance to finance.
Second.
All right. All in favor, record your votes. That one is reported and re-referred to finance. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Senator Donovan. Are you moving that they adopt the substitute? Properly moved in a second. All in favor, say adopt, substitute, say aye. All opposed? Okay.
This bill accomplishes two things, Mr. Chairman. One is that it changes the disclaimers and the information that is given to a new home purchaser when they purchase the home to reveal when the developer will turn over the HOA to homeowner control. This comes from a group of homeowners in my district, but when I went to the CIC subcommittee this summer, it seems to be something that resonates in a lot of places across the Commonwealth. And so there are some developers that keep control over the HOA and do a very fine job with that until every lot in the development is sold. That can be 20 years. But when there's a conflict between a developer and the homeowners, it creates a confusing set of circumstances because sometimes the conflict is as the developer and sometimes it's as the HOA and sometimes it's just reflected one way or the other. So this works to, number one, clear that up so that there is truth in purchasing and the homeowners will know when that release is. The second aspect of this bill is that it provides that a developer will actually register with the CIC board, and I know I'm using the wrong language, and I'll get to the amendment in a minute and give it to you, so that they actually register the HOA much earlier in the process. Many, maybe 95% of the developers are already doing this, but what this accomplishes is if a homeowner has a problem and they go to the state and they complain to the state and say, hey, there's a problem in my development, the state sorts that out, and if it's determined that it's not a contractual problem with the developer, in essence, that it's an HOA issue, they have very little recourse that they can pursue at the state level. If all of the developments are registered with the CIC, it gives the public a place to go and to have a conversation and to see if those developers, while they have complete control over that HOA, are actually compliant and conforming to the best practices for HOAs statewide as directed by the CIC. So that's essentially what the bill does and where it comes from. And I don't know if there are people that want to speak to it or not. I know that there's peace in the valley, and if you would rather just see if anybody opposes, maybe that's a way to move along.
Is there anyone in opposition to the bill? Anybody want to shake their head no? All right, is there a motion?
Second.
Properly moved and seconded that the substitute be approved. All in favor, record your votes. All right, that one is 14-0 in support.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Senator Distaff, do you want to go?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. If we could start with 584, we have a few amendments.
584. All right, listen up.
Right. So we'll start with the amendments, and I'll have to turn that over to our great legal counsel here to explain or to tell me what they are and explain where they are.
You want to explain his bill to him? No.
I'll explain the bill. I got that down, but I'm not sure what the amendments are.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think, there are three amendments. The first is on line 354. After are made, strike the first clause. The first clause symbol. The second one is on line 354. After under, strike the service disabled veteran business procurement enhancement program established pursuant to section 2.2-4310.1:1, comma, clause 2 under. And the last is to strike at line 356 after or the third clause. And the amendments were, I think they were discussed as there was a concern raised by the Department of General Services that they would have some unintended consequences, and that's why they were offered.
Is there a motion to adopt those amendments? Properly moved and seconded that those amendments be adopted. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, all opposed? All right.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, if I could explain the bill now, now that it's in front of us in proper order. What this bill does is establishes a statewide service-disabled veteran-owned business procurement enhancement program. It basically establishes a statewide goal of procurement services for disabled veteran-owned businesses to utilize discretionary spending by state agencies in procurement orders, prime contracts, and subcontracts. And I believe what the amendments did was there was a couple of sections of code that we would have exempted that from, or the unintended consequences we would have actually exempted them from certain coverage, and we didn't want procurement laws and coverage that we didn't want to do. So we didn't want to cause any harm to the bill, so that was just kind of technical in nature to make sure everything's in good order. But that's it. It puts a goal similar to that of the other small business programs out there.
Okay. Is there anyone here in opposition to Senate Bill 584? Hearing none. Is there a motion? Properly moved and seconded to report. Any further discussion? Hearing none, record your votes. And that bill passes 15-0.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you very much. Next, we'll move on to Senate Bill 569. Basically, the backstory explains this, but what it does is it does two things. One, it exempts from licensure any person who's a student in good standing and enrolled in a public or private institution of higher education. So under the DPOR regulations, if you are an unlicensed subcontractor, then you have to have, you're actually in violation of law. What this does is doesn't require a college student to be a licensed contractor and actually come under that of the general contractor if he's doing like painting services. So let me give you the backstory behind this. So we have college painters down where I live. And basically a Class A contractor will hire in 4 or 5 of the college students for a summer or for weekends to come in and paint for them. And when DPOR, and our understanding of the DPOR regulations, and Dolly rolled up on one of the sites, it wasn't really an official violation, but it should have been a violation. So this allows college kids who are basically painting over the summer for a Class A contractor to receive a 1099 to pay their appropriate taxes and not be an employee of the company, where the company, if they made them an employee, would have to pay all their benefits and everything else. The second piece of this, and that the bill also expands from licensure anyone doing basically remodeling, repair, improvement, removal, or demolition on behalf of a Class A properly licensed subcontractor, the value from $2,500 to $5,000 on a per project basis. And by adding a home improvement contractor classification to the list of valid licensees supervising contractors may hold. So the Class A contractor that this whole section fits within, if you're a home builder or home improvement building contractor. So an example of a home improvement building contractor is anyone who has anything that adds value to it. So like if you're a builder and you hire a subcontractor who does drywall or painting, then they'd be covered because on that, from that aspect, they would be classified as the other side of the building contractor, home improvement building contractor. And Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, that's pretty much it, and the backstory.
Okay. Would it include electricians?
No, not at all. Electricians, plumbers, HVAC, structural, framing, any of that would not be included in this. And the reason for that is they have a master's or a separate individual license that they've got their own side of this with journeymen and things of that nature.
Okay, thank you. Any questions of the patron? Is there anyone here to speak in opposition?
I do have a question, sir, if no one else does.
All
right. I read in the bill, in this part about a student in good standing or enrolled in a public or private institution of higher education, they get to paint for the summer or whenever it is they do, in addition to the career training or apprentices. But what if you're not a student at a college or university? What if you're just someone who wants to paint part-time or whatever? You're the equivalent of those students, but you're not enrolled?
This only covers enrolled students.
So they would get some kind of preference over non-enrolled, over young people who are not enrolled?
And what this is trying to do, if you're not an enrolled student and you want to paint, then and you want to have your own business, then you truly should set up your own business. What this does is cover employers who are just picking up college students to do painting or picking up bricks or debris removal and things like that. So if you want to paint and you're going to do it as a job, then they can hire you as an employee and pay your benefits. This is primarily covering college students. And with a higher cost of tuition, we know that our college students need everything they can, every break they can.
Right, and just to follow up, Mr. Chairman, so if I'm saving for college because I can't afford it yet, or I'm getting ready, trying to save up, in fact, if I'm a high school student, I graduate and I want to go to college the next fall, this wouldn't cover me.
No, and if that's the case and you were a painter, then most of the companies would hire you immediately because we have a shortage of qualified painters. So you would be hired right away as a full-time employee, and you'd be getting benefits.
So it'd be full-time or nothing for that? For
No,
that
or you
partic-
could set up your own company.
But,
Yes,
uh,
as a
okay,
1099
okay,
employee,
just
this
to-
covers that.
Just to follow up, Mr. Chairman, I still don't think I'm wrapping my head around this, because what if I don't want my own company, and I'm not a full-time student or a part-time student in good standing? I just graduated high school, and I figure I'll get a part-time job painting before I go to college. Or I'm not in good standing, whatever, I failed and I'm going to summer school. Why would those kids, I'm just trying to understand, I'm not a formal apprentice, and I'm not enrolled career training. I just don't understand why them and not others.
Well, the primary focus here was to handle the issue of college students. So when they're home for the summer or they're home for a long weekend, they can actually get a part-time job instead of at a restaurant painting and adding value. Now, a regular student to do that would kind of be a different bill. And then we would probably have a lot of opposition to that. I'm not trying to create opposition. I'm trying to solve that major problem that we have, not just in my area, but across the state with college students who are home on vacation or looking for a part-time job on the weekend.
Thank you.
All right. Is there anyone here in opposition to the bill? Hearing none. Is there a motion?
Second.
Properly moved and second, the bill be reported. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Record your votes.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, thank you very much. Next, we'll move on to Senate Bill 55. And for our general counsel, I do have a quick question. If we pass Senate Bill 55, do I need Senate Bill 54? And I think the answer would be a no. In 55. Okay, so if we can address 55 first, then we may be striking 54.
All right, do you have an amendment for that one?
Do we have an amendment? Oh, yes, we do have an amendment.
There you go.
Thank you,
Please
Mr.
record.
Chairman. It's at the beginning of line 91, strike has and insert prevails on. It clarifies that they would have to prevail on the motion to quash.
And that was, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, that was based on discussions with the Supreme Court, and it clarifies the language here. We had, the council and I had a few conversations about that. Supreme Court came down with a recommendation, and we tended to agree with them since we were discussing it beforehand anyways.
Is there
Second.
properly moved and second that we adopt the amendment? All in favor say aye. All opposed? Passes 1-0.
So, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, if I can explain the bill, it's a pretty simple bill that basically says through the DPOR process, with DPOR, you start with, they try to get a consent order. If you can't come to agreement with a consent order, then you go to an IFF. And the way the administrative process is written, once you get through through the IFF, if you don't come to resolution there, you go in front of the board. But there's a piece in there that says before you go to a formal hearing, that both parties have to agree to a formal hearing. If both parties don't agree to a formal hearing, then there isn't one. So if the conference is waived or they fail to dispose of the case by consent, the bill would require a regulatory board to conduct a formal hearing. So a lot of times, and what I have seen from sitting in on this, on the IFF, if they don't dispose of it accordingly, and not everybody's happy, both parties have to agree to an to a formal hearing. Since DPOR wouldn't agree to it, or the other party, they don't offer it. So what this does is say that either party would agree to it. And then further, what this does, it also provides that a regulant, so basically if there's a complaint and if there's a motion, I'll have to have the council explain the subpoena ducum tecum, because that's a legal term, and I explained it a little differently, but he'll have to explain that because Every time I try to explain that, I mix it up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think the objective of the legislation is to say that if the if a board under DPOR goes to court to get a subpoena to produce records, and the respondent or the entity moves to quash that subpoena, if they win on the motion to quash, then they would get court costs and attorney's fees. And I had to practice saying Ducas Tecum a couple of times.
Okay.
Well, there it is, Mr. Chairman. There is no financial impact on this. We've already gone through that, but what DPOR hardly ever does subpoenas like this, so there probably would, never be a case that this comes in, but just kind of covering all bases.
Okay. Any questions of the patron? Is there anyone here in opposition to Senate Bill 55? Welcome.
No, it's all yours.
Mr.
I'll
Chairman.
move this out of your way, sorry.
Mr. Chairman, Jay DeBoer of DPOR. There is no agency position on the bill, but there are a couple of concerns that I want to express to you. First, on the subpoena Ducas Tecum, the senator is correct. That is a process that DPOR and its board seldom use. And I would agree that if one of our boards managed to go to court and get a subpoena that could be quashed, then we certainly should pay the cost of the prevailing party. I think that's fair and that's just. The concern that I wanted to raise is on page 1 of the bill, and it's the process that's stricken in lines 41 through 51. Mr. Chairman, this is what we call our prima facie section. It is regarding those licensees against whom complaints have been brought, usually contractors, but not always. Many of our boards have complaints brought against individual licensees where the licensee either does not respond in any way to the complaint, to the investigators, or they do respond and say they don't want to participate, they don't want a hearing, and they waive any rights, further notices that they have under the Administrative Process Act. That is, they basically surrender, they want to give up their license, throw themselves on the board. Since that was adopted by the General Assembly in 2013, it has saved us and our licensees, because they pay for these things, fully 100 informal fact-finding conferences per year that we have not had to have. Now, back in the days when Lawyer Wade was conducting informal fact-finding conferences at DPOR, he had about 100 hearings where no one showed up. There were no witnesses, but you still had to have the court reporter, you still had to reserve the room, you still had to set aside the time, and you still had the staff time that was involved. That has been done away with since the legislature adopted this in 2013. I've never heard a complaint about the prima facie process. Also, if after having waived or been absent and never having, shown up during the process, someone suddenly pops up and says, I've changed my mind, I want a hearing, I want to participate, we will let them in. We always will let them in. So whatever the will of the committee as to the balance of the bill with its intent, I'm pretty sure that this one is inadvertent, and I hope you'll restore that language.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak in opposition? Is there anyone here to speak in support? Okay. Bill is
Chairman,
before us. Yes.
I would say I don't want to pass a bill out that there's an issue with. So if I could, if I'm not the last one up today, if I could take that by temporarily to get with legal counsel, otherwise take it by for the day, I'd like to make sure I'm not doing something that would, in effect, screw up the law.
All right, let's see if we can pass it by temporarily, and then if y'all can't, we'll pass it by for the day.
Great.
And you wanted to strike 54?
We'll strike 54.
Okay. That motion to strike 54. You want to record your votes? Okay, that one is stricken. Okay, Senator Wexton, you want to go next?
Actually, I think there was a drafting error in the bill, so if I could get counsel back real quick, at least in the PDF version of this bill, it appears that Legislative Services set out the same code section twice, once with the amendment requested and once without it. So this is 163. Let me go. So I believe the correction would be just to strike everything from line 56 on.
You're making that motion?
So I would move that, that we make that
Probably move in
amendment.
second that we strike, we make that amendment. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay. All right, tell us what the bill.
Mr. Chair,
Very,
yes.
very quickly.
Mr. Chairman, this just adds Loudoun County's African-American burial ground for the enslaved at Belmont, which was recently recognized, salvaged. They have an archaeological survey performed. There are at least 44 graves there. I know it's small, but it's very, very important to the people of Loudoun County that this be included.
And this under the same terms as the previous one?
That's correct.
Okay. The proper motion would be to re-refer to finance.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded, the bill be reported and re-referred to finance. All in favor, record your votes. And that one is reported. What about Senator Wexton? Senator Wexton, you have another bill.
Mr. Chairman, there was a note that it was being re-referred to Commerce and Labor.
But because you struck your other bill, we left it here.
Oh, okay. Well, I told Mr. Lamora that it was being re-referred to Commerce and Labor,
He was
so I
standing
didn't.
back there a minute ago.
If he's
so-
still here, okay, well then, good. Then I'll
All
go
right.
ahead and do that one too.
I'm going to take mine back. I know very much you that's okay.
949?
949. The original intent, she had two bills that dealt with the same issue from a different perspective. When she struck the other bill, there was no point in sending this over there. And so we took no action.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have Senate Bill 949, which deals with net neutrality in public procurement. What is net neutrality? It is premised on the idea that all internet data should be equal, that the Comcasts and Verizons of the world can provide the pipes through which information travels, but shouldn't be able to decide what is traveling through them. As the committee may be aware, the FCC repealed net neutrality principles that had been in place since 2015. Those rules protected consumers, markets, and innovation throughout the United States. And now ISPs will be able to block or slow content and promote the content of their corporate partners above all other content. And we're limited in terms of what we can do here at the state level, but one thing we can do is decide not to purchase from ISPs who do not adhere to net neutrality principles. And that's what this bill provides. It provides that no public body in the Commonwealth will do business with any ISPs that fail to adhere to net neutrality principles. It is a basic consumer protection bill, and if you love freedom and you love privacy, and I know you do, you should love this bill, Mr. Chairman. And I ask that the committee report the bill.
Would you not agree that it would be a detriment to doing business in Virginia?
Mr. Chairman, no, I do not.
Okay. Fair enough.
I mean,
Is there anyone here in opposition to Senate Bill 949? 9:40.
That's okay. We have lost some of the folks who were willing to testify today, but Mr. Chairman, I'm Ray Lemura, President of the Virginia Cable Telecommunications Association. I would agree with you that this would be a detriment to the Commonwealth. In fact, we also feel that it would be a disruption in service throughout the Commonwealth. We do feel that this legislation will limit choices available to the Commonwealth of Virginia, not only to universities, but hospitals as well that have state activity. We do favor net neutrality. We do think it should be addressed at the federal level. We're having this ping pong effect. The rules you just heard that have been in effect for years were just changed 2 years ago, and now again just changed a few days ago on January 4th. So we're having this ping pong effect based upon who is the FCC committee chair. There's also concern in the legislation that it is not addressing specific incidents such as natural disasters or state incidences like we face at Virginia Tech, when a priority must be given to state agencies and police and law enforcement and those kind of activities. They must have a priority. So for these reasons, we stand opposed to this legislation.
Thank you. Does anyone else?
Mr. Chairman, question for Mr. Lemore. Really quickly. Don't federal laws already preempt the override provisions for emergency situations?
We don't believe that.
And could not be impacted by this?
We don't think that under this legislation that it's not addressed.
Okay.
Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Rich Schulman with CenturyLink. We operate in, I think, 37 states around the country. I guess the big point for us is we can't have a patch. This kind of regulation can't be a patchwork among all the states. It's got to be a national policy that's set. That's what the FCC has been working on. And we do believe that it actually would seriously cause problems here in Virginia if a bill like this passed. Thank you.
Welcome. Come on up, Dave.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, David Ogburn, appearing on behalf of Verizon, would not repeat what you've heard earlier that I agree with. This is an issue clearly that needs to be fixed on a federal level. We've put Virginia and Virginians at a significant disadvantage. The FCC used really strong preemption language when it took away the last net neutrality rules. It made it clear that you can't directly take them away, reimpose them. This clearly indirectly reimposes them. I'm not going to tell you it's preempted. I'm going to tell you it would probably end up in litigation as to whether it was preempted. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Hi, Mr. Chairman. Keith Martin with Virginia Chamber of Commerce. For the reasons previously stated, we oppose the bill for those and for the fact that we think it'll hurt our economic competitiveness. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Phil Abraham on behalf of T-Mobile. We too oppose the legislation for the reasons previously stated. Thank you.
Welcome.
Mr. Chairman, Guy Rolling representing Google. We associate ourselves with the comments of Mr. Lemura.
Thank you. Welcome.
Mr. Chairman, Barrett Stork with Cox Communications. We also oppose the bill as stated.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. All right. Anyone in support of the legislation? All right. You want to wrap it up? Certainly.
Well, if you were a home consumer, it would not. But if you're a Virginian that, for example, relies on a library or a school for your internet access, that internet access may no longer be available because it wouldn't meet the net neutrality requirements imposed by this bill.
Didn't the folks here from the different providers, or at least Mr. Lemura, say that he supports net neutrality?
We support Verizon supports a net neutrality solution. It needs to be a federal solution, not a state patchwork solution.
Thank you.
Senator, thank you.
Any further questions? All right. Did you want to say anything else?
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Is there a motion?
Second.
The motion is to report. All in favor, record your votes. I'm sorry? It's not going to pass. Don't worry about it.
6, noes none.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Any patrons come in? All right. You ready? Okay.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, we're back on Senate Bill 55, this wonderful bill. There was an inadvertent delete on lines 41 through 51. So with that, we would like to do an on-the-fly amendment to reinsert line 41 through 51. Is that correct? Perfect.
Motion properly made and seconded to reinsert that language. All in favor? All opposed? Okay. All right. Is it now in proper form?
Now we're in proper form.
Okay. Does anyone else wish to speak to the bill? Hearing none. Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Properly moved and seconded. We had passed the bill as amended. Record your votes. That one is reported. Okay. Senator Rice, come on up.
This one is going to rivet you, Mr. Chairman. Senate Bill number 529, and there is a substitute. I move the substitute.
Properly moved and seconded that the substitute be adopted. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, when you go to go to a building official to get a building permit, a license, I was always under the impression that the contractor did it themselves. That's covered in I on line 15. But if you are the owner of the home and you're going to build a deck and you go to get a building permit, currently you have to provide a written statement saying, I'm not the contractor and I'm not doing the work, as well as an affidavit that states the exact same thing. This eliminates the affidavit. You still file a written statement saying, I'm not doing the work, a licensed contractor is, but you just don't have to have a notarized affidavit to go along with it.
Okay. Is anyone here in opposition to Senate Bill 529? Hearing none. Is there a motion?
Second.
The fine substitute, is that correct?
Fine substitute.
All right. Properly moved and seconded. All in favor, say, record your votes.
I can vote for West.
All right, that one is reported.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Understood, sir. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've got Senate Bill 754 before the committee, and I've got some very important people here today with us with regard to this bill. This is to make the freedom flag the official flag of remembrance of September 11th, 2001 in Virginia. We have with us today a gentleman who's been here the entire day who happens to be a survivor from 9/11. I know that he would like to speak briefly. But one of the reasons that I brought this bill this year was it occurred to me that there are folks in the General Assembly now who probably do not have a very vivid memory of September 11th. And in fact, for many of us who are here, we probably have kids who are too young to remember, and even kids who are in college now may not have very much of a memory. And if you think about other major events in American history, think of Pearl Harbor Day. I suspect if you asked many kids in any school what day is Pearl Harbor Day, many would probably have a tough time remembering that significant loss of American life. We obviously remember 9/11 because of the horrific things that happened, and we do not forget the date because that's how we refer to it, 9/11, 9/11. But I brought this bill after being introduced to this freedom flag that was developed in the weeks after September 11th, 2001 by a gentleman who is here today, Virginian, lives in Henrico in Senator Donovan's district, Richard Melito.
And love to, if they could just briefly, I know the hour is late, but they've been here through much of the day. If they could just come up briefly, show you the flag, explain what it means, and perhaps if the gentleman who is the survivor of 9/11 could just speak briefly to this. But I think the importance of this bill is one of the things that this group does is they provide these flags to all schools all throughout Virginia. They help provide learning opportunities for students in those schools, and I think this would be an appropriate way to, in a small way, honor the losses that we sustained on September 11th.
Okay. Welcome.
Thank you, Senator. Chairman, members of the committee, I'm John Riley. I'm the president of the Freedom Flag Foundation. We oversee distribution of the Freedom Flag across the Commonwealth and beyond. With me is Richard Melito. I'll ask you to come up. And Fred Meyer. Richard's the founder of the flag. I'm going to ask them to hold the flag. Star up. Fred's on our education committee. And just briefly, this is a flag of remembrance, and now, 16 years after 9/11, a flag that's a teaching tool for today's generation. And I'm a father of 4 kids in middle and elementary school, and know well what it's like to try to communicate to them what happened on 9/11. So this flag that Richard created, literally on the back of a napkin, as a tool to remember for his patrons in his restaurant, went viral before viral was a thing. This is the pre-social media era. And it has 10 simple elements. The white star represents all who lived and died for freedom. The blue background represents all Americans united together for freedom. And remember how united we were in the days after 9/11. The 5 white bars represent the Pentagon and the organized protection of our freedom. A lot of people confuse the Pentagon with being in Washington, D.C. It's in Virginia, of course, Arlington County. We in the Commonwealth were part of the attack and sustained a lot of lost lives. The red stripe on the top represents the bloodshed from the Pentagon and the crew of American Air Flight 77, over 180 lives lost. The 2 broad red stripes in the middle represent the Twin Towers and the bloodshed there from the 2 planes. I'm part of this organization because I lost one of my best friends that day, Doug Ketchum, a resident of Midlothian, one of Midlothian's finest in my opinion. He was a graduating classmate with me, and he went to work early that day in Tower 1. Total of 2,977 lives lost, more than Pearl Harbor. Since Pearl Harbor Day was mentioned, a lot of people don't realize more lost lives than any day since the Civil War on American soil. The 3 white stripes represent the rescue workers, the firefighters, police officers, and Port Authority employees who responded heroically. And we have one of those here with us today. I'll ask him to stand. This is retired FDNY Fire Lieutenant Clarence Singleton, also a Purple Heart recipient. He survived the collapse of Tower 1. And lastly, the bottom red stripe represents the bloodshed in Pennsylvania in Shanksville, United 93. So you can see there's 10 simple elements, and for school kids, it's a way to clearly communicate what happened in the simple terms that they can grasp. We need your help because we're a group of volunteers. I don't think the Freedom Flag Foundation will ever be more than that. But to go statewide and continue what we're doing, we feel like passage of Bill SB 754 will greatly enhance our credibility and our efforts to go farther. Clarence Singleton's going to share a couple words.
Welcome. Thank you. Good evening. I'm Clarence Singleton. I'm a retired New York City Fire Lieutenant. I've been a resident of Virginia for the past 12 years. And I was retired at the time the attack took place on the World Trade Center. I voluntarily went over to assist, and I was severely injured. I worked with a lot of the firefighters that made the supreme sacrifice on September 11, and they were great guys, and they would do anything or come anywhere to rescue total strangers, and many of them have perished attempting to do so. One year, I've been to a number of funerals during my tenure in the fire department. And one year I attended 11 funerals of guys who attempted trying to help strangers. A lot of us were also served on two fronts, and I'm sure some of the civilians as well. They fought at the World Trade Center as well as in Vietnam. I was a combat Marine in Vietnam, and I was hit 5 times. And by designating the freedom flag as the remembrance flag of Virginia, I think it's an ideal means of remembering our fallen and keeping 9/11 in the forefront. And I believe that we don't truly perish until we're stopped being remembered. And I would love to keep the memories of my friends, coworkers, and others in the forefront. Sir.
Sorry, I'll be very brief. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I am Mickey Ogburn. I'm chairwoman of the Henrico County School Board in support of this bill. The students of Henrico County, many of them were not born in 2001. Even though they, because of the Freedom Flag Foundation and access to the age-appropriate lessons that this foundation provides to our schools, our students display a deep understanding of the significance of that day and an appreciation of the American heroes, just like we heard from. So this flag has become a symbol of remembrance in Central Virginia with your help. We ask that you help it make an official symbol of remembrance for our great Commonwealth. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, question. I'm not a vexillologist, which is the study of flags. I've seen several 9/11 flags around there. Never Forget comes to mind, several others. Can you speak to why this flag is of a different stature? And I think most of the committee is very in support of it, but why this flag is different than the other ones that are out there, and that would help maybe some of the discussion.
Great question. We've done some research on that. I've asked myself the same question. I think it's the simple symbolic elements. It doesn't have words. So in the education context, which is why we're here today, students have to dig a little bit. They have to dig as to the meaning. They have to do research. And this compels them towards many projects. We've seen teachers take hold and pursue civics, history, social studies, science. We even have seen a marketing teacher, Douglas Freeman, say, we're using this flag to study branding. So it's a symbol. It doesn't quite give you everything at first glance. And it's just taken off in the classroom is the best we can describe it. The teachers love it, and the students have engaged with it, and we're just going to go as far as we can with it.
Madam Chair, Senator McPike, the only thing I would add to that is this was created by a Virginian. It's been provided to more than 1,000 Virginia schools so far. Governor McAuliffe flew it in front of the governor's mansion a year or so ago. And so there's I think already, since this group has been working, sort of a very Virginia-focused component to it.
Is there anybody else? Senator Rubin?
These other flags, and yours is not just a lot better, but when you described all the symbolism in it, it really, the elements, really is an educational tool. So I hope that we will pass this as our flag.
Is there anybody else in the audience who wishes to speak on Senate Bill 754?
Madam Chair.
Oh, sorry, Senator Steff. I wasn't looking at my little prompt here. I apologize.
That's right. Madam Chair, a lot of us, a couple of us on the dais here were very active. I was still in the military then, and was on my way to the Pentagon when it happened. So I thought this was an accurate representation of remembering the fallen. And I will be honest with you, I spent a lot of time overseas after that in some very bad places doing some very bad things for a good cause. And I would like to just say that this is a very accurate with the remembrance. And my first elected office on city council, when they were talking about putting a mosque at Ground Zero, I sent a letter to every member of the New York City Council, asked them not to do this, and gave them the reasons why. I had 21 articles in the paper, over 15 attacks on TV, basically telling me to retract the letter. And the one thing I will tell you, and the one thing I remember, my daughter was very young at the time. She came up and gave me a hug after I had a reporter standing in my face saying, "When are you going to retract the letter?" And I turned and looked at him and said, "When you bring back every member of the military that has lost their lives fighting on the global war on terrorism, when you bring back everybody that I knew in the Pentagon that I responded to and had to help dig out, and you stand them by my side, then I'll retract that letter. Until then, the letter stands." So with that, I'd like to make a motion we report.
Properly moved and seconded, the bill be reported. No further discussion, then record your votes. That bill is reported.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Chair.
you. Is that the only one you had?
I've got one other that I think should be very quick. Senate Bill 758.
All right. Is there a substitute for that bill?
There is a substitute, Mr. Chair. Second.
Properly moved and seconded, we adopt the substitute. All in favor say aye. All opposed? Okay.
Mr. Chairman, this was brought to me by the Virginia Realtors. I understand that there is no objection to it, and it, as you've probably seen driving around, or if you know realtors, that there are more and more of these real estate teams. This bill just requires that real estate teams, if they're operating under their own name different from their brokers, that they get their own business entity salesperson's license. And it also expands the responsibilities of the supervising brokers and requires that as a condition of the renewal of the license of a supervising broker, that they'll provide to the board the name and the license number of each real estate licensee affiliated with the branch office at the time of their renewal. And the real estate realtor folks may be able to answer any questions that you all have with regard to this bill.
Is there any opposition to the bill? Very briefly.
If you have questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Okay.
Otherwise,
All right.
Senator, explain the bill.
Seeing no opposition, the motion is to report the substitute. All in favor, record your votes. That bill is reported.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Senator Suderline. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's so good to be here. I've got Senate Bill 778. This is similar to legislation that this committee's considered last year. Senate Bill 778 would allow adult Virginians to purchase consumer-grade fireworks. There are several other fireworks proposals that you've heard making their way through the General Assembly, some that add a new tax, some that are drawn so narrowly so that only one or two businesses might be, a narrow band of people might be able to supply the product. The goal of my bill is to allow enterprising Virginians to sell consumer-grade fireworks to adult Virginians, the same product that they can purchase across the border in Tennessee and West Virginia, and that we all know frequently they do.
All right. That concludes your remarks. Is there anyone?
Yeah, I'll save the rest of my remarks for a close, because I imagine there'll be a few others to speak now.
All right. Is anyone here in opposition to Senate Bill 778? As briefly as you can be.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Senate Committee, how are you? Mike Riley, Executive Director of Fire Programs. I stand here representing the Governor, Governor Northam, as well as Secretary Moran, in strongly opposing this bill. Real quickly, some statistics. Over the last 10 years in Virginia, over 700 fires and 650 explosions have occurred as a result of fireworks being sold within the Commonwealth. In 2016, over 105 incidents related to fireworks. And in 2015, nationwide, almost 12,000 injuries from consumer fireworks. All consumer fireworks in the Commonwealth of Virginia currently are regulated by the fire marshals as well as local. The State Fire Marshal's Office currently oversees about 60% of the landmass of the Commonwealth of Virginia. And if this bill passes, those entities that are south of the border will be springing up all across Virginia. And it's something that I think that we just can't deal with. I will say that in addition to the governor, the International Association of Arson Investigators, Virginia chapter, the Virginia Association of Governmental EMS Administrators, Virginia Association of Volunteer Rescue Squads, Virginia Department of Forestry, Virginia Fire and Life Safety Coalition, the Virginia Fire Chiefs Association, the Virginia Fire Prevention Association, the Virginia Fire Services Council, the Virginia Office of Emergency Medical Services, Virginia Municipal League, Virginia Professional Firefighters, Virginia State Firefighters Association, Virginia State Fire Marshal's Office, and Virginians for Fireworks Safety all strongly oppose this bill.
Thank you. I guess that eliminates everybody else speaking. But anyway, welcome.
Glenn Dean, resident of Colonial Heights, retired from the fire service, and only speaking for myself. That leaves me the lone individual in the state, outside of those organizations just named. There's something that was alluded to. The majority of the state's population resides in a locality that has some level of restriction from the use of or sales of these items. Not the majority of the localities, the majority of the state's population. So for the passage of this kind of bill, what that's going to do is that they're going to go ahead and enact legislation under the Statewide Fire Prevention Code Act to say, hey, status quo is leaving us. So I really don't know what the benefit would be, other than, some money. There's a money component to it. There's a couple of problems with the proposed legislation. By national definition, permissible fireworks, what we call in Virginia permissible fireworks, which are the ground-based, handheld, or euphemistically referred to safe and sane firework, is on the low end of the consumer firework category. Consumer firework is got a national definition, and as I said, permissibles are part of that. For over 60 years, Virginia has taken that and drew a line, and anything below that line was permissible, and anything above the line was illegal, unless you had a permit. And to say in this definition that permissibles are not consumer fireworks will allow large quantities in stores without the same protections when they contain the same pyrotechnic material as the big stuff. So basically you could have a situation where you got a store where the very large quantity of consumer permissibles that has the equal destructive force of a smaller quantity of the higher end stuff. It's all in the packaging. Also in lines 133 and 130 through 136, it says for the purpose of the statewide fire prevention code, it should be noted that the fire prevention code does address or include transport regulations. The statewide fire prevention code does not deal with transportation issues of commodities such as this. That is under the purview of the motor carrier safety regulations as enforced by the state police or any equally credentialed law enforcement officer. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Good evening. My name is Keith Brown. I'm Fire Chief in Loudoun County, Virginia. Lots been set up here. We echoed that opposition. Just want to point out a couple things. Loudoun has very dense housing. This bill would allow those fireworks to be used in residential areas as well as agricultural. That begins to be a problem. Loudoun County can legislate these types of fireworks out. However, they are going to be brought in from other jurisdictions, so we still receive these dangerous fireworks from outside. I guess the last point would be you have the statewide fire prevention code. We talked about that about an hour and a half ago. this is where this type of regulation needs to be dealt with, not in front of the General Assembly. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Welcome.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Bob Mathias, City of Virginia Beach. We're opposed to this. That's the city as a whole, but specifically the fire department, the police department, and our emergency medical responders. They have to respond to these type of things. And we already have a tremendous amount of problems with fireworks at Virginia Beach. Senator DeSteff can attest, the folks down at Sandbridge and other, they come in, they start setting fireworks off. They end up with a bunch of complaints, and it's just really bad for the neighborhood. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Welcome.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Chris Legault for Nationwide Insurance, Chubb Group, and the Property Casualty Insurers Association. We're all opposed to, all of them are opposed to this bill. Any kind of relaxation of the sale of fireworks is going to lead to an increase in claims frequency as well as claims severity. And you don't have to see a lot of pictures of burn victims to know just how severe these injuries can be. We would oppose the bill.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Mike Polycrones, Virginia Municipal League, we're opposed to this bill for all the reasons stated.
Thank you. Welcome.
Chairman Ruff, members of the committee, my name is CJ Stolley. I represent the Virginia Fire Chiefs Association. I did just want to point out that approximately 11,000 injuries occur every year, and 31% of those injuries occur in children under 15 years old. So I hope you'll consider the children when you vote against this bill.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right. It's time to close.
I think we know where the votes are. Just a few things to address. One, I don't, the folks that say that they take issues with particular parts of the bill, you know, the bill's been online for a while. They never contacted me about, you know, suggested amendments to fix it. I think the bottom line is they oppose it outright.
I think
we know that's the truth. Second, Loudoun County, I would point out, already has adjacent jurisdictions that allow fireworks sales. As I pointed out, every county that's adjacent to West Virginia or Tennessee has that. I would also point out the discussion on folks' concerns about fireworks already in the Commonwealth. Clearly, the prohibition that they think is working is not working based on the claims that they've asserted. So I would suggest that we should allow Virginians to purchase this product like they are in other states and allow enterprising Virginians to sell this product that they're able to purchase in Tennessee and West Virginia, that they somehow get across the line here. I won't trespass on your time anymore.
All right. Thank you. Any questions, patron, or any? If there is a motion to move forward with this, it has to go to finance.
Move to PBI.
Properly moved that the bill be PBI'd. Record your votes.
Those five.
Bill is PBI'd.
Thank you.
Okay, let's see, who's next? Anybody else got a bill? You got one? Okay.
Oh, let's get Mr. Mason up here. If you got a bill. All right, Mr. Chairman, a couple of housekeeping items first, if it's all right.
Certainly.
Senate Bill 652, ask that be passed by for the week. Still have some conversation with Joe D'Amico with Department of General Services and a few others on that. And next week should be abbreviated.
All right, that one will be passed for the day.
Okay. Senate Bill 649, we had a similar bill 648 as well as Senator Locke's bill. Last week we PBI'd and sent to Housing. Recommend the same action on that bill.
There's a motion and a second that
two bills.
Senate Bill 649 be passed by indefinitely with a letter going to the Housing Commission. Any discussion? Hearing none. Record your vote. Okay, that one is dealt with.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Next is Senate Bill 651.
Okay.
This is a request as a follow-up to legislation I carried a year or two ago regarding service-disabled veteran businesses. Some of the feedback is that they want to broaden, it's such a small pool for the IT segment within procurement of goods and services, that by eliminating this will help to actually increase the participation of service-disabled veterans, and that is the bill, Mr. Chairman.
Is anyone here in opposition to Senate Bill 651? Properly moved and seconded that Senate Bill 651 be reported. Hearing no discussion, record your votes. That one is reported.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And the last bill is Senate Bill 650. This sets out a provision to allow local governments the option, if adopted by ordinance, to allow the weighting and consideration of businesses that are bidding on local government contracts that also participate in Virginia Registered Apprenticeship Programs administered by the Department of Labor and Industry. And this is really an effort to start to connect. We know we have high school redesign that's on the table. We need to figure out ways to start to open up and connect to issues. I can tell you, meeting with my Chamber of Commerce and others, as well as industry, looking to increase the amount of training and apprenticeships we do. I've talked to school counselors this year who are really concerned about high school redesign, that they don't have enough because we need more businesses and opportunities to connect to apprenticeship programs. And as a part of that high school redesign, we're expecting in junior and senior years for those apprenticeships to materialize. Well, the system doesn't exist yet today. And so we need to look to find opportunities to start to connect the dots. We spend billions of dollars on public school education, as well as vocational training in our community college system, but we don't yet connect to how we participate in procurements within local governance. And so this is seeking to connect some of those dots across the multiple array of different issues we face.
Would you agree that if you open it up to localities to set those standards, that they could set all sorts of standards?
I'm certainly amenable to an amendment from the chairman to limit as a small proportion of a weighted factor to allow at least acknowledge some credit, because there are some various nonprofits that do great work at connecting kids to skill sets. And I think there should be opportunities where we can have actually our local projects participate in partnership with them.
On the fly, I have no intention of trying to rewrite the bill. You can, if you want to take it by and try, for we can try to see if you can narrow it down.
Will do. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. That one will be by for the week. Okay. Are there any other bills? You're stuck with mine.
That's optimistic, Adam.
Senate Bill 688.
Can we just PBI in a block? Okay, direct your attention to 688.
This deals with cooperative procurement, and there is a substitute, and I'd move that substitute.
Okay, substitute's been moved and properly seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
This is a narrow exception to the procurement law allowing environmental services to be dealt with through cooperative procurement, such services as stream restoration and stormwater management. And Shannon, do you want to enlighten any more?
Madam Chair, members of the committee, I'm Shannon Varner with Resource Environmental Solutions. They do stream restoration work and provide these stormwater management programs for localities. Obviously, there's a great deal of expense involved with localities meeting the Bay goals and other water quality goals. And a common theme is the procurement process is slowing that down and adding costs that could otherwise be spent on getting these water quality improvements in the ground and reducing localities' costs.
Madam Chair and members of the committee, Katie Payne at Williamsville, and on behalf of the Associated General Contractors. We had concerns about the underlying bill, but are very thankful to the patron for working with us, and we're fine as written now. Thank you.
Okay, great. Please come forward.
Madam Chair, Phyllis Arico from the Virginia Association of Counties, also representing Virginia Municipal League. We feel that this is a really helpful bill for localities, and we very much support it.
Great, thank you. Anybody wish to speak in opposition to the bill? Okay. Committee
Chairman.
operates on a motion. Motion.
Move the report.
Motion's been made, properly seconded to report Senate Bill 688. Please, all in favor, vote aye.
Thank you.
Bill reports. Is that it? Is that, if that completes the calendar, then the committee will rise.